right, Doom v. Vamos v. Vamos Epicureans. This is Sunday, January 11th, 2026. You're tuned into the BCE Comics Pod, where we are going to read, rate, and review big collected edition comics. That's Marvel Epic's DC finest and omnis of all flavors. I'm your host, Nick Smith, and I'm joined by...
Stojr from Stojr Shelf. How's it going, Nick?
Okay, a little bit of a hiccup there to start. I wasn't even sure if we went live or not, but I'm fairly confident we are now. A little bit of a weird, slow morning. I still have my mobility difficulties, and I did not get coffee made. So, if I start slowing down, I'm sorry. I'll just slap myself.
Fade out on me.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna jump into it and hopefully make these review ones a little bit shorter than we typically do. This month we are reading Daredevil Epic Collection Volume 8 To Dare the Devil. A reminder to anyone watching this, spoilers ahead. We're going to talk about these in a little bit of detail, so if you don't want anything ruined for you, make sure you've read this month's book in advance before continuing on with this video. We will not be held responsible if you choose to do otherwise. All right, you ready to jump in, Stojr?
Let's do it.
All right. This volume contains Daredevil number 155 to 176 and material from What If number 28 and Bizarre Adventures number 28. Wait, are they really both number 28? They are.
Yep.
How about that? Okay. Always worried about typos, right? I was a little surprised to see that there were no annual issues included in this, given that this volume covers a span of 3 years, right, from 1978 to 1981. But when I looked into it, it appears that there weren't any Daredevil annuals between 1976 and 1989. And it seems the annual was only revived so that Daredevil could participate in those annual crossovers, right? Atlantis Attack happened in 1989, so... yeah, just weird little thing there.
Well, I don't think it was monthly either, right? Because there's an issue here that says now monthly, and that may have played into it. Because the annuals are, basically born out of filling a gap in the publishing dates, when, as they cycle through the full year. There happens to be an empty week when you map everything out or something like that. So that's where they came from.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. This was bi-monthly to start with. Daredevil was in the tanks until we get a new creative team on there, and it really kind of revives it. So, having said that, this volume does contain the start of probably the most defining run in Daredevil's history, with Frank Miller taking over and introducing a lot of crime noir elements to the Daredevil book. We get some of the definitive Daredevil stories and tropes introduced here, such as Daredevil's war with the Kingpin and his fight against ninja assassins called The Hand. Never mind the introduction of his former lover turned assassin Elektra. This kind of defines Daredevil in the modern world in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, they're just about to relaunch Daredevil with a new number one. Even in the previous volume, right now, you see Elektra still. It's hard to not spoil future storylines here, just when you speak in general about like who's in the comic and who's not, right?
Yeah.
Elektra's still around. She's been, but what's interesting with Daredevil is that he's really been defined by his creators, and there's been a lot of like really good runs. So this is the kickstart of all of that. And there's some people that argue that the early '60s stuff is really strong, in comparison to it, to its peers of that day. But you have the Miller run, the Nocenti run. And then there's some gaps that are sort of more widely known, where, Daredevil has a different costume and, there's some different storylines that people are able to pull together, but less so about the writing and things like that. And then it's revised in the late 90s, early 2000s with Bendis, and goes through a number of different creators. And, a lot of people collect Daredevil in omnibus format because they've been pretty well with that modern stuff of getting those creator-centric runs out there, whether it's Mark Waid or Mark Cicchetto as an artist in recent runs and things like that. So it's only been, I think, the last run that wasn't as widely received. The last like 25 issues. But there's a new number one coming out soon, and if you're interested in Daredevil, a little plug for that. He's actually going to be a college professor. Um, so that's the hook for the new run, right? New number one. He's had a lot of problems where he's not going back to being a lawyer, and he's going to teach lawyering at a community college or something like that,
Well, that's
or not community, but what's the college that Spider-Man and the Human Torch have went to? It's
ESU,
NYU or
Empire
something like
State.
that. ESU.
Yeah,
That's it.
Empire State University. Okay, well, that sounds interesting. I didn't know a new number one was coming up. I've kind of been getting some monthlies lately and just waiting for decent jumping on points. If there's anything I'm interested in, maybe I will jump in on that. All right.
I'm going to get up because I want to grab something, but I'm just curious. Have you ever collected this run before? Because
No.
this is an area where I am somewhat double dipped.
Yeah, no, I have not. This is Daredevil is one of those characters that I have kind of a big blank spot in my comic knowledge and memory. Again, when I was a kid in middle school, I'd pick up some issues every now and then. I know I have issue number 300. And then when Bendis was doing his run in the early 2000s, I know I was reading it then. But Daredevil was always one of those characters that I thought, you know what, someday I'm going to pick up the trades of this and try to read through it and actually get a sense of who Daredevil is. So a lot of this is new to me, other than osmosis, just kind of knowing about it from general Daredevil history. So what are those?
Yeah, for the Frank Miller issues, I've had these for a while now.
Oh,
So the Daredevil Visionaries Frank Miller, it's a thin trade, as well as the volume two of that. And basically, this does overlap with a good part of this epic because it has the original Daredevil or the original Frank Miller art run in the thin issue, and then starts off with him writing the book in the thicker one. So it's interesting to see like how they printed it differently, and obviously there's more content in the epic, which is why I picked it up. It's not just a complete like reskin or anything like that. So anyway, so these are stories that I've read before and very interested in. So no negativity with reading it again. It's been great.
yeah. Stojr, we're experimenting with new cameras and so forth. I think you might have been flipped. Can you hold those comic books back up again? Let me see if I've got that
Oh,
fixed.
you know what? I forgot to tell you because I can mirror my interface. So if you're mirroring me, you're probably flipping me back and forth. Um,
Yeah, here,
so
hold
let me
one
try
back
and
up. I
fix
think I
it.
fixed it. Okay, yeah, we're good now.
Okay, I won't touch it then.
All right. All right, cool. Well, let's actually get into the issues in this volume. All right, we start with Daredevil number 155, The Man Without Fear, with a question mark on the end. Script by Roger McKenzie, pencils by Frank Robbins, ink by Frank Springer. Daredevil is swinging around town, but is having sudden attacks in his head that he can't quite explain, but that may be caused by a mysterious figure, we're not sure. As Matt Murdock, he arrives at his office to find loads of applicants for an assistant position, and he hires a woman in a wheelchair named Becky Blake. But Matt ditched Becky when he heard his old girlfriend, Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, was back in town. So back as Daredevil, old Hornhead decides to attack the Widow and the Avengers, and something clearly is not right. All right, Stojer, any thoughts?
I really like Robbins' art. It sort of reminded me of Gene Colan that I always kind of associate with Daredevil or vampire stuff or the darker side of Marvel, so to speak. And so for me, I didn't bump into the art. I thought it like kind of fit for what I would imagine that time period was. It's not my favorite, but I did enjoy it for what it was, and I was surprised that I liked it as much as I did. Thought it was a little silly that Matt's able to take out Hercules, Beast, and Captain America, even if by surprise. He's a little overpowered in his own book, if I do say so myself. I mean, Hercules is supposed to be able to take on Thor, and Matt doesn't necessarily have super strength, so that was a little odd. But I'm gonna kind of turn my brain off a little bit and go with it. But yeah, I enjoyed this issue. I thought it was fun, and I think that what surprised me starting here and overall is that for the most part, I didn't dislike the non-Miller issues in this volume. I thought that they were they weren't the same as Miller. I mean, there's a definite change when we get there. But I looked at this and sort of still enjoyed it. How about yourself?
See, this may be a point where we disagree a little bit. I thought this got off to a poor start. The random pains that Daredevil had, and when he was falling, it just felt like the creators were trying to manufacture some kind of drama, but didn't really know where they were going. It just felt hollow. Maybe if there was something in the previous issue that set that up that we are missing, maybe that would improve. But just starting in like this, I thought, ooh, is this going to be a rough ride? I mean, I knew the Frank Miller stuff was supposed to get better, but I was worried about the start. However, I did like the character of Becky Blake. Maybe she's a little bit standoffish in her personality, but having a woman in a wheelchair working for the blind Matt Murdock could make for some interesting dynamics if that gets explored, although I don't think it really does from what I've seen. Daredevil trying to attack the Avengers, sure, that was kind of interesting. I'm curious as to where it's going to go, but I just thought it was a poor start.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, you're kind of dropped in the middle of like, why is he falling and why does he have these headaches or problems? I guess my only comment or retort to that might be that like he is literally a guy that like is completely dependent on his radar sense, and he's leaping off a building. So, you turn that off in the middle of what he's doing, and he's just a dude falling from a building. So I think that's what they're trying to convey. But yeah, I mean, we are kind of thrown in the middle of the story. Like, it took a little bit of research to figure out who the villain even is, because we don't have the volume before. We're not reading the volume before this.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Daredevil 156, Reign of Death by Roger McKenzie and Gene Colan. Inks by Klaus Janson. Now, I'm going to add with Klaus Janson, and I'm assuming that's the correct pronunciation. I couldn't find anything online, but he was born in Germany, so I'm guessing a German pronunciation here.
I mean, that probably tracks because in my head I've always called him Jansen, and I knew whatever I do in my head is wrong. So,
anyway, Janssen actually started on Daredevil with issue 124, so quite before this. He was meant to bring some consistency to the look of the characters on a book that was notorious for having a revolving door of creators, which we've already seen a revolution, right? So he wasn't the inker for every single issue, but he's been probably the most consistent creator on this book since issue 124, is my understanding.
And I always associate him with JRJR in my head, so he might be around for quite a while. And I'd have to go look, but he might continue into the end of Senti run. So he's a mainstay at Marvel, even if people don't realize it.
John Romita Jr. ends up on the Daredevil book at some point, right? Is it soon after
Yeah,
Miller?
he draws the end of Senti run.
Okay.
Which is after Miller.
Yeah. All right, anyway, for this issue, 156, an enraged Daredevil faces the Avengers, but he collapses in pain, and the Avengers take him to the hospital where Daredevil faces himself in a boxing match. And that's about all I can say there. Stoger?
A couple of notes that I have here, like, hey, Widow Matt is a secret identity. How about you not say that out loud all the time?
Yeah.
He's still supposed to be secret even from the Avengers. I'd like to know who the general contractor is at the Avengers mansion that is, bribing all these different Avengers to kick open doors and windows where they can just kind of open the door. Like, there's no need to for Hercules to smash through the door or Beast to jump through the window. They can just kind of walk. I know it's more dramatic, but somebody's getting a kickback there for some extra work at some point in time. I enjoyed Beast in this issue. For me, having not read things like Champions and haven't done my full Avengers walkthrough, it's good to see Beast as sort of this, kind of kind, fun-loving character that we all know him of. But, having a lot of my knowledge of reading Beast around the 2000s of the X-Men era, he kind of gets turned into a villain, or at least somebody in the background that is not very well liked for some of the things that he does. So I like a simpler time with Beast, where he's a getting flowers for Widow after he feels like he wronged her, so to speak. Um, I don't understand the Deathstalker yet, and we already have like a Mr. Fear. I think that's his name, for Daredevil, and I keep thinking that he's Mr. Fear, but he's not, because a lot of this feels like, he's drugged Matt to have these hallucinations and have these sort of fears, but it seems like it has nothing to do with that. There's just this weird character that is this Deathstalker, but we'll learn more as that goes forward. Um, and Yeah, I mean, I just, there's a little bit of a silly trope of him kind of like fighting himself, in the dream sequence. I guess that's fine. It's very comic booky. It's hard for me to beat that up when I know that Spider-Man's going to do it so well, in 5 or 10 years, in their comics. So I don't want to say that this is a trope that they should stop doing, because in the clones, or in the Alien Costume Saga, there's an amazing issue with the costumes fighting, but it feels a little silly here and unnecessary. What did you
Yeah.
think?
I really appreciated Gene Collins' art on this, particularly when we do get to that coma-induced boxing match. Whenever we're in Matt's subconsciousness, the panels are irregular and curvy, or they're a splash page which has the scenes flowing within the picture, and I thought that was really good and really well done. I'm honestly surprised at the number of splash pages in this issue. Not only that, but a lot of the panels are quite large, which makes reading it go very fast. But at the same time, it still feels like the issue is a lot of filler with no clear direction. So, yeah, that's about all I've got to say on that. I have one other little note that really it's not important, so we can just move on.
All right.
I'm just thinking in terms of time, right? We don't want to go too long with these things. We're already notorious for going over 2 hours for a lot of these reviews. Okay, let's do Daredevil number 157. Also, I don't even know why it's happening. I'm already getting the warnings that I've got some. I need to turn down my encoder settings or whatever. I don't even have the comic viewer up. I have it turned off. Okay. So, yeah, hopefully things aren't getting jittery. I think, Stojr the other day when we were trying to record some X-Men one-shots and I was having problems, I think my computer was downloading an operating system update, which I haven't done yet, and I have a feeling that's bothering things. Yep. Okay, so 157, The Ungrateful Dead. Mary Jo Duffy takes over scripting Mackenzie's plot. Gosh, we just clearly this is a play on words of the Grateful Dead, right? Didn't we just lose a guitarist from the Grateful Dead just yesterday?
Yeah.
One of their founding members. So okay. All right. Anyway, the villain Deathstalker threatens the unconscious Daredevil, but the Avengers come to his rescue, and Daredevil wakes up just in time to save the Beast. At the end of the battle, it seems that the romance between Daredevil and Black Widow is being renewed, much to the annoyance of Hercules, and apparently to the annoyance of Matt Murdock, who later visits his other lady friend, Heather. Did not realize Matt Murdock was such a playa. All right. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Later, Matt is really in a sticky spot where both Heather and Natasha, the Black Widow, show up for a date with Matt, and so do the Animen, for some reason. All right, Stoja, your thoughts?
So, a couple of thoughts here. One, I have some rules in my head for how certain characters should be characterized, right? We talked a little bit about Doctor Doom in previous ones. Don't show his mask. I want to see him have a meal with his enemies, things like that. With Daredevil, I have some similar thought processes. I need to see him with some good old-fashioned Catholic guilt, whether he's going to church or upset or, just kind of visiting a church as a Catholic or as a lapsed Catholic. As a Catholic myself, there's a connection point there. As an Irish Catholic, there's a connection point there, even though I'm I guess somewhat lapsed. I'm not at church every Sunday. That's one. The other is that he's just a complete man slut. Like, I love the fact that he's with everybody, and that is something that will continue throughout his run. That's why some people bumped into his cameo in the She-Hulk episode of on TV and him and She-Hulk getting together. I'm like, that is completely on brand. All right. So, yeah, so Matt is definitely a player in the Marvel universe and will continue to be for years to come. The the sort of the longing of Becky in her thought bubbles in here. I forget what page it's on, but in my notes, I'm kind of thinking to myself like, you just got hired. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're sort of like, there's a little bit of like romance soap opera stuff that they're trying to introduce here.
The secretaries at Murdoch and Nelson, or Nelson and Murdoch, are obligated to have a crush on one of the two, usually Matt, right?
Yeah, and I don't think they address or talk about in this entire volume like where Karen is. So
Yeah.
that's obviously something we just know from the lexicon of Daredevil. But like if you were just reading this cold, you wouldn't bump into it because like you don't know the character. They don't introduce her. They don't mention her. It doesn't come up at all. But yeah, it's that last panel. Matt will never care for you while he can choose between an heiress and a most glamorous woman in the world. It's like, hey, Becky, like you're still going through your orientation here. Like, chill out. So, and then God damn it, can we avoid the cat people for like one podcast? Like, they're following us
Was that this
everywhere.
one? Was that this one we had the cat people?
There's Animen. They're
Oh,
animal men.
okay.
There's a
Not
cat
the
person.
cat people, but a
No,
cat
no, no,
person.
not the cat people, but
Okay.
just a person in cat form,
Right.
or
Sure.
a cat in person form. However, I have no idea what the origin of the Ani-Men are. Are they like the High Evolutionary or something like that?
I don't think so. I thought these were people in suits or something. Like, I think they were first introduced early in Daredevil. Like, they're in early Daredevil, like volume one of the epics. They're in there, but I don't know. And honestly, I
Yeah,
don't care.
yeah. I just enough with the cat people. Your thoughts?
Yeah, as I've kind of been saying, I feel like we are struggling to find a story thread here. I like some of the experimental paneling in the early Deathstalker fight, but then the comic settles into more traditional pages later on. Otherwise, I don't think I really care about anything else going on here. That this is getting into this was a struggle for me, and I was starting to really worry about this about this volume. It gets good later, though.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with you.
All right.
Yeah, I like I said, I didn't mind like the art in the first couple issues, and the Deathstalker stuff I could sort of buy into, even though I was you trying to catch me up, but I got scared when the Ani-Men showed up.
All right, let's move on then to 168, A Grave Mistake. Our credits here are a little bit jumbled, but one thing is clear, that this is the start of Frank Miller on art. Now, this is also the start of Miller having regular work at Marvel. Previously, he did a couple of short stories for DC. Then at Marvel, he was a cover and a fill-in artist. Sales for Daredevil were tanking, and Miller had expressed an interest in joining the title because he thought a blind character in a visual medium was very interesting. That this was something that I heard an interview just recently where he talked about, Daredevil is the one character who is defined by what he cannot do, right? Most superheroes are defined by what they can do. Spider-Man can cling to walls and spin webs and stuff. Daredevil's defined by the fact that he's blind, that he cannot see, right? So he thought that was really interesting. And writer Mackenzie had actually worked with Miller before at DC. They did like one short story in a war book, and supposedly Mackenzie lobbied to bring Miller into Marvel. At least that's what Mackenzie says. Okay, so we get our first issue with Frank Miller on art. The Animen, who are now inexplicably being called the Unholy Three, take off with Matt Murdock and bring him into a graveyard where Deathstalker is awaiting him. We get Deathstalker's background, that he can phase through time by going into limbo, and he has a Death Touch glove that he stole from AIM. A fight ensues, and Matt, as Daredevil, uses his wits to ensure the battle happens in the dark, which gives Daredevil both the edge and the win in the battle. All right, Stojr, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the first thought from a double dipping standpoint, this is the way that it looks in the trade that I had previously. So one of the things I was not a fan of was the fact that the covers are kind of cut off because they had this like sort of angled look to them to give this stylized look in there. And the art kind of looked a little darker. I don't know if that was just printing techniques or if there's some recoloring that the Epics have done between the Visionaries line and the Epic Collections line. So, even outside of just the extra content, I was a lot happier to collect this in a format that just kind of visually looked a little better to me. I'd have to look up like how much touch up they did, or again, if it's just more of like a printing technique. Those Visionaries had some sort of glossier, a little bit thicker paper, but not enough for me to worry too much about it. I actually kind of prefer this paper sometimes that's in the Epics. The overly thick or the overly glossy stuff starts to feel like too much. I have a not to get off topic here too much, but I have a is it Secret Wars or I forget. There's a trade that I have. I think it's Secret Wars. That is from Panini, from the UK publisher or the I guess they're UK. Maybe it's
European.
But it's
general,
like
I think.
yeah, but it's like really thick paper. So it's it's like an 8 or 9 issue miniseries, but it's a thicker book because the paper's like visually, the paper feels so thick that you almost feel like you're going to crack the spine or crack the pages when you're flipping through it, because it's relatively thin book with thick paper. So sometimes thicker paper is not always a positive. It kind of depends on the medium and the format. Frank's a welcome addition. I like the consistency of his art. I think his art is really well received, well done in this era. I actually fished out some of his later work. I have the Batman volumes, and then let's see if I can point this little white book right here that's like laying across. That's the Elektra Lives Again graphic novel that I happen to have. I noticed it on my shelf yesterday, and I pulled it out. That has Frank Miller art from like 1991. And it's visibly different from this, right? It starts to get into more of like what you would see in the Sin City era, things like that. So his art definitely evolves. I prefer this version of his art versus some of that later stuff. I don't mind that later stuff for like Sin City because it feels very stylized.
Yeah.
But then when he tries to come back and apply it to like Batman or Daredevil or Elektra, it feels just blocky and weird to me. Not a fan of it.
I agree.
The convoluted origin of Deathstalker, we're talking about 158. So looking at my notes here, that's in there. I thought that was just confusing as heck. But whatever gets us through this quickest and onto some better villains and better characters. And Becky's just making this like a full-on soap opera in her thought bubbles at the end of the issue. I enjoy some of the tropes of like him being able to like freeze him into the gravestone or him using his powers, but overall, I don't think it's enough to save this issue from the Catman that's within it. What are your thoughts?
I thought things suddenly got interesting in this issue. We wrap up a meandering storyline, but I also got the sense that the art was being done by someone trying to prove himself rather than someone trying to just get a project out. And I think Klaus Janson even said something to that effect, that he was happy to see that Miller wanted to be there, that he actually put the effort into the art. And I feel like you can see this when you can compare this to the previous stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with Gene Colan. Gene Colan's great, but it does just feel like it's a project, get it done. So Miller provides a lot of great detail in his art. The pacing's excellent. Deathstalker's origin is a little convoluted, but it suddenly made him more interesting for me. Now we know a bit about him and the things that he can do. Clearly we're still missing something from a previous issue, but at least we have something there instead of him just being this shaded, cackling guy in the background, right?
For like 2 whole pages, and then he's gone.
Well, yeah. I guess I was thinking at the time I wrote my notes that maybe we'll actually go somewhere with this, but we don't. We move on to better things.
Yeah.
All right, so speaking of, let's go ahead and do that. Daredevil number 159, Marked for Murder. News of Matt Murdock's abduction has been made known to the public, which prompts reporter Ben Urich to start investigating the blind lawyer. Now, this is not the first appearance of Ben Urich, but an early one that will see him become kind of a staple of the Marvel Universe. Now, some thugs also seem to be taking a contract to kill Daredevil, and they do so by sending a message to Matt to meet them at Pier 42. Well, Matt, as Daredevil, obliges, and he fights off the goons, including one Turk Benner. Turk first appeared in Daredevil number 69, but he's going to be a regular underworld informant. I kind of have a soft spot for Turk. I like him and how he's used in these books, and he makes appearances in Spider-Man every now and then. All right, so we're left at the end with the reveal that Bullseye had been behind the plot so that he could film Daredevil and study him for an eventual showdown. All right, Stoger.
I thought Daredevil had some interesting usage of his powers in this issue. I think Bullseye's plot is pretty smart. Like I kind of like the inventiveness of it. You can also see that Miller is doing some of the things that, like from an art style, from a layout perspective, that are very Miller-esque, right? Like you didn't necessarily get that in the first issue because it was just him kind of getting started. But here, you start to see like the way he's going to like think about layouts, the way he's going to think about panel designs, right? Page 87 is a panel layout that he's going to use a bunch of times with that sort of tall, thin panel with the rest of the page filled up with 4 or 5 panels there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's also the idea here of the robber on page 94, which is interesting. I know that's just sort of a throwaway page for his Billy Club, but Miller will do this a bunch through this volume where bad guys or robbers need to wear the I Murdered Uncle Ben uniform of that like green cap and like the jacket and pants and stuff like that. So I thought that was an interesting little default things that he goes to. And then yeah, Turk is great. Turk makes his way over to the TV show on Netflix slash Disney Plus. So they use that character. I think I even saw. I was flipping through TikTok mindlessly while I was making some food or something for the kids, and I stumbled across like the trial of the Incredible Hulk, like some like clip of the behind the scenes of that, the making of it, and I'm pretty sure Turk was in that too, where they had that character there, and I've never watched the trial of the Incredible Hulk. I was too little at the time. I don't know if you've seen that, but that was a crossover with Daredevil and the Incredible Hulk TV show.
Yeah, no, I don't think I ever saw that. When I was young, I think I saw the occasional episode of the Hulk. We're talking about the Lou Ferrigno Hulk, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I think I saw an episode every now and then, just in like reruns, but it wasn't regular watching in my household. Anyway, for this issue, I enjoyed it. I liked the gritty street-level crime. It makes it very realistic. Miller's art continues to have plenty of details, and the Billy Club feature at the end there I thought was fun. I'm curious as to why it was included, because, that's kind of the sort of thing you get in an annual, but we know we're not getting Daredevil annuals right now, so maybe that's actually the reason why. But anyway, it's fine. All right, let's jump into 160. This is In the Hands of Bullseye. All right, so Bullseye manages to capture the Black Widow to use as bait to lure Daredevil. Dee Dee decides to call on the Widow, discovers the message that Bullseye left that she's been kidnapped, then begins his hunt by messing with the seedy regulars at Josie's Bar. And man, I like Josie's Bar too. This is just a great little location, the way it's used, the people that are there. Just good stuff.
Yeah, no, agree. And I think again they've put this into the TV show on the Disney Plus season. Josie's Bar was a part of that. It kicks off, I think, actually the first episode, if I remember correctly. And then Spider-Man ends up with a bar similar to this in like the Brand New Day era, which is like the bar with no name or something like that, which is like a villain's hangout club. Now this is more underworld and less like people in costumes, but still, it's always good to have a place you can go to where the villains are hanging out. And a quick side note, it reminds me of one of the greatest scenes at like a villain at a bar, which actually comes from the DC Justice League Unlimited cartoon, where Batman, Orion, and the Flash are trying to hunt down some information, and they go visit. I think it's the Trickster, and he's at the bar. And the Batman and Orion are like, go punch your villain out, and Flash just goes up to him and goes like, hang out, chill out, guys. Are you off your medicine again? All right, I want you to finish your drink, go back to the hospital, take your medicine, and we'll hang out. We'll play whatever checkers tomorrow. And they're like, you're just gonna leave him here? And he's like, yeah, he's gonna listen. You're gonna go back to jail, right? Yep, I'm good. Thanks, Flash. Talk to you later. And it just showed like this like big difference between the way Batman handles certain villains and the way Flash would handle certain villains. I always thought that was really good, and since it had to do with Josie's Bar, I feel like I needed to insert it there.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this issue, or should I?
Yeah, sorry, I thought I might have been stepping on your overview there, but
No,
yeah,
finish.
some other quick thoughts specifically about this issue instead of my random tangent here. So Bullseye always feels like unstoppable chaos. I love that about him. He's like a feral animal basically. He's just gonna keep killing,
And he's smart. He's smart.
Yeah, and I like when he's a little bit smarter too, like in not just there's some things that are happening in here that we'll talk about in later issues that give him a bit of a handicap, and then he gets over that. But I think that's interesting. We get a Peter and MJ cameo on page 104, which I thought was nice. The joke on page 103 to 104 of kind of like, he wants to be alone. He hates being alone. She's tied up right now. She was literally tied up. Those were some, I thought like purposeful attempts at some interesting writing between the pages and the panels there. I thought it was interesting that the Bugle absolutely hates Spider-Man, but like Daredevil can just like hang out, just sit on a desk in the middle of the floor, and no, you don't have JJ running out screaming at him or something like that. So I don't know. That seemed a little weird and out of place there. And I also final thought, but before the final thought, does Daredevil not think anybody can see his red gloves at Josie? So like he's undercover, but like he never takes the gloves off. So like he's got this like trench coat and like hat on, but these like bright red gloves as he's sitting at the table pulling out money. And it looks weird, right? It's like, hey, we can all see the costume under there, man. Like, why don't you take those gloves off? I'm looking at page 109 specifically.
Yeah. I wonder if it's just sort of in a place like Josie's Bar, you don't ask questions, right?
I guess, yeah.
But no, you're right. That does stand out.
It seems a little odd, especially when you're trying to protect your secret identity. I also like. I don't know that I understand the flipped epilogue prologue thing. I don't know if like you picked up on that or had thoughts. But I read that. I was looking for like the little creative writing twist there, or like what I was. Maybe I'm just not that smart. But I don't really get it. Did you pick up on why they did that?
No, I didn't think too much of it, to be honest. I just kind of thought maybe the writers were trying to be cute. That's all I took of it.
Okay.
Yeah. That aside, I thought this was a great issue. Bullseye, of course, is great. Having the subplot of Ben Urich researching the connection between Matt and Daredevil being weaved into the story, I thought fit just well. Yeah, gosh, and there's other little things that I'm afraid to bring up on the Comic Viewer now because I'm already getting hints that we're losing frames, and God, this is just a perennial frustration of mine. I need to figure out what the heck is wrong. Anyway, at the end in Josie's Bar, the boxing match in the background, kind of commenting on things that are happening in the boxing match while Daredevil's beating people up, and kind of commenting on Dee Dee's actions too. Really cool. And I noticed throughout the volume that we'll kind of get more little things like that. That there'll be a radio on in the background with a baseball game, and it kind of fits what's going on in the scene. It's a weird little narrative trick, but it's fun.
I mean, and especially when Miller takes over writing, he likes to have a bunch of like TV panels or things like that. I mean, there's at least one time when he takes over writing that he does that. So artistically, he likes to, he's got the TV on the background, so to speak, a lot. So.
All right, well let's go to the next issue, which is the gives us the title of this volume, Daredevil 161, To Dare the Devil. All right, so Daredevil tracks down Bullseye to Coney Island and fights his way to find Black Widow. The Widow is able to free herself, but just in time for Daredevil to have a final confrontation with Bullseye, and it's Daredevil's relentlessness that eventually causes Bullseye to crack and give up. All right, Stojr, what are your thoughts?
So I thought that sorry, my notes got moved. Always love the silhouette movements of characters like Daredevil and Spider-Man on page like 119, where he's they illustrate the movement of a character and sort of draw that character multiple times. I thought it was an interesting play on the sort of Old West. You have the damsel tied to train tracks, and it was nice that Black Widow kind of frees herself in this versus being rescued, as well as the sort of fake out that happens here. Good use of journalism for Ben. I think like they're sort of showing Ben as an actual journalist and doing things and not just magically discovering stuff along the way. So yeah, I mean this is a fun issue. It's always a brutal fight with Daredevil and Bullseye. The ending's a little weird, like that he just kind of gets like scared and sort of quivers up and whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
Whatever the right term is. But they at least retcon that later or explain it later, depending on your view of their answer. What did you think?
Yeah, similar thoughts. Didn't quite appreciate Bullseye just whimpering and giving up in the end, and I don't know if that has been consistent with his character leading up to this point, but it certainly wasn't what I expected, and as you say, they do address that later on. A great conclusion otherwise. The idea of Daredevil being so relentless and frightening that it causes a supervillain to just give up, I do like that idea. I just wasn't sure that Bullseye is the right character to do that with. Having said though,
and you just don't buy that he's like actually scared of Daredevil, right? Like they were just going punch for punch. Like he's not. This isn't like some I don't know, some villain that had some I think of like Dr. Octopus, right? In the sense that like once you get past his tentacles, you just have to hit him in the face once and he's down, right?
right.
So it's not like this is some villain that like had this big orchestrated scheme that like once Daredevil's in the same room with Bullseye, like he's defeated and Bullseye's going punch for punch for this guy, right? So why is he so scared of him at the very end? I mean, we find out later, but right here it feels odd.
Yeah, no, agreed. All right, I do have a no prize that I want to give for this issue. So in the Mighty Marvel tradition, we're going to give out no prize awards, which really just gives us a chance to highlight some of the fun and weird things found within the volume, or to highlight what the volume does best. I'm saying that and I'm realizing I think at times I got so sucked into reading the story of this, I forgot to keep an eye out for things I could give as no prizes. So this volume might be a little thin on these. Anyway, the first one I'm going to hand out is the You Couldn't Pay Me Enough award, which goes to the thugs that Bullseye gets to ride in the roller coaster on page 120 to 121. Now, I have nothing against roller coasters. I like roller coasters. But to know that there is a person, or in this case a mannequin, tied to the tracks near the top of a drop-off would deter me from taking that gig. Because what if Daredevil doesn't rescue her? Now your roller coaster train is going to run into that and likely derail at the top of the drop. This is a death sentence either way, is it not?
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Yeah, so, I don't think I would be taking any payment for that job. Okay, shall we move on to 162?
Let's do it.
All right. This is Requiem for a Pug, script by Michael Fleischer, art by Steve Ditko. Essentially, we get a filler issue here. Daredevil gets exposed to excessive radiation and suffers from amnesia. After stopping a diamond heist, a crooked boxing manager sees how Daredevil fights and brings him into the boxing world. Well, after Daredevil wins a bunch of fights, the manager tries to get DD to take a dive so that he can cash in on his gambling bets, but Daredevil refuses, wins the fight, regains his memory, and takes down the crooked boxing manager. Alright, what are your thoughts, Stojr?
I love that this is in here. I think it's like a little time capsule. It feels like we're reading a Superman story from like the 40s or 50s. It's actually skipped over in the Daredevil Visionaries volume. Again, another reason why, to sort of upgrade here to the epics of you're getting everything. So I've heard about this. I think it's also skipped over in. I want to say that there's an older omnibus for Daredevil Frank Miller, and I forget the specifics if that's one or multiple volumes or whatever, but I'm pretty sure they skipped this issue in that too because it's a creator centric omnibus. Right. So this is one of the few places you can get this until they catch up with just sort of Daredevil omnibus volume whatever, right? Because and I actually woke up and some people were complaining about the Uncanny X-Men omnibuses that were just announced by Omar. Just a quick side note as to explain the way Marvel seems to do omnibuses. There's basically, I'm sure there's different varieties, but there's basically three different varieties of omnibuses. There's an event omnibus where it's just an event, right? Some crossover, some, whatever, right? So you get like, the War of the, what's it called? The War of the Realms by Thor, right? And it's collecting everything for War of the Realms. It's some giant omnibus. And then you might have the creator-centric omnibus, which a lot of time will only focus on that specific creator. So in this case, it would skip this issue because Frank Miller didn't draw or write this issue. Sometimes they don't hold to that explicitly, but when they do, you're missing something. And then there's just this normal sort of volume numbers, right? Where they're just collecting things in order. You get Daredevil 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're going to get everything. Anyway, so there were some X-Men ones announced that overlap with other things, and some people were complaining and having to explain that stuff. The other thing I guess here is like, while it's not a cat person, we still can't avoid the cats. I'll be happy when we're done with the cat people. And again, I'm a cat person. I got a couple cats at home. A couple dogs too, like this one here that I'm gonna have to put in the crate after I turn it back to you.
I was gonna say my cat's down here. I could pull her up.
But otherwise, it's just a fun Golden Age feel issue. Nothing. It definitely takes you out of what you're reading because it's so different. But otherwise, I'm glad it's here. How about you?
Yeah, I was trying to do a little research on this one to see if I could find any information about, why the filler issue, why Steve Ditko or whatever. And what I saw online was just a bunch of people complaining about this issue, saying it's trash and so forth. And yeah, it is not the same feeling as the books around it, but if we just remove this book from the issue surrounding it, this is a great Silver Age Steve Ditko story, right? It is a lot of fun. Drawing parallels between the amnesiac Matt Murdock and his father, boxing Jack Murdock, that's an interesting concept, right? He's following the footsteps of his father when he doesn't know any better about who he is. Amnesia stories can be fun too because they tend to point to the core of the character always being there, even if it's maybe a bit unrealistic that the character remembers everything except his own identity. But still, I think if we remove this, set it aside as a Silver Age type of book, it's great. It's a lot of fun, but I understand the complaints of it's not the same feel, it's not the same pace as what's around it, and so it does feel odd. Well, it is odd. It's a filler issue.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's go to 163. This is Blind Alley. Roger McKenzie returns on script, as does Frank Miller on pencils. We get Josef Rubinstein on inks, but aided by Klaus Janson. I think that might just be a temporary thing for whatever reason. Okay, the Hulk is in New York, and when Matt discovers this, he approaches the Hulk as Daredevil and talks him down in order to revert him into Bruce Banner. Now, since Matt knew Banner, and I don't know when that happened, he lets Bruce Banner stay at his apartment, and he sets him up with the means to leave the city, except that Banner once again turns into the Hulk, and that leaves Daredevil to confront him once again. And this time they actually kind of get into a fight. All right, Stojer, what are your thoughts?
So, looking at this Rico character on the first couple of pages, and I'm just wondering, is he the Paul of 1979? Paul being a character everybody kind of hates from Spider-Man recently. The I found it interesting that they emphasize like Dr. Robert Bruce Banner. So I think they are kind of tying into the fact that the TV show felt that the name Bruce was too feminine, and they called him Robert on the Robert Banner on the show.
Was that the reason?
Such a weird thing in retrospect. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like first they thought that I might be oversimplifying or not the exact wording of the explanation, but basically it comes down to they changed his name to Robert Banner on the show because they thought Bruce didn't sound good. They thought it sounded too feminine or too not masculine enough or something along those lines. Because you don't normally see what, and maybe they retconned it in the comics, like I don't, or maybe I don't know if Robert's his full name in the comics because of that now. But like you don't normally see them in the comics spell out Robert Bruce Banner. That was a because the Hulk was on TV at this time, I think thing.
You know, I'm having a vague memory that there might have been one of those goof ups in the early Hulk issues where they did switch between Bruce and Robert, and then that was like the fix of it. I could be wrong
That
though.
might be, yeah. I mean, that might play into it, but I mean, definitely from a TV show perspective,
Sure.
I'm 99% sure I'm right
Yeah, yeah.
with that stuff. So, and maybe that's where they got it from, right? They went back and they saw, oh, we goofed up once, and and that's where we're getting it from. The page 166 has the big studio camera on the street, which I thought was kind of weird. Like, why is there this giant? I mean, are they filming something there?
Just so
It
happens to
just
be
like it
there.
felt a little out of place. Yeah, and, like I didn't really understand that. But anyway, I think overall, like this is a cool issue. It's cool to see Hulk jump through not only the train but the street itself when he's like leaping out of the subway. The It's a good example of Daredevil completely out of his league, right? If we go back to the first issue where he's like taking out Cap and things like that, like he's not winning against the Hulk here. He's a fly that's annoying the Hulk, and when the Hulk makes contact with him, he's pretty much down and out, right?
Yep.
Like he's barely able to get up, and as we see in the next issue, he's in the hospital on the next page. So I like the realism of that. What did you think of this issue?
Yeah, no, completely agree. Daredevil does not stand a chance against the Hulk, and that is shown here. As you say, if and when the Hulk can make contact. There is a great panel there where we get the kind of shadow Daredevil moving around, so you get that sense of movement. And of course, yeah. But once the Hulk hits him, yep, that's it. He's down for the count. That's on page 167. Matt's knowledge of Banner and the Hulk being one and the same certainly gives him an advantage, and I'll say that was something that was revealed in the 60s. It's shown in the Hulk's comic at one point that his identity gets revealed to the world, so that's no secret. But I like that Matt is smart enough to talk him down, right? Rather than try to fight or confront him. He knows he doesn't stand a chance, so to talk him down and do that, and so that was good. The continuing subplot of Ben Urich discovering that Matt is also Daredevil, that's built upon here as well, and that continues to be really interesting.
I almost wish Becky didn't slip up, not only because it's just a stupid mistake, but like I do wish that Ben would figure this out completely on his own as opposed to an oops. And
Sure.
granted, like this is just the icing on the cake for all the journalism that he's doing. Like this just kind of fully confirms it.
Hmm.
But it would have been nice to have him, or almost like have him bluff Matt, right? Like maybe he's 95% sure, and he gets Matt to trip up and reveal it. But with Becky kind of just screaming Matt on the street here, or Heather, it's Heather, right?
Yeah.
Matt has so many women, it's hard to tell. But with Heather screaming Matt on the street, like, I mean, it's pretty much like cementing it for anybody who even had an inkling in that world. And granted, he's the only one, but
Yeah. So yeah, I like where that seems to be going. Should we move on?
let's do it.
Oh, I clicked it anyway. So here we go. Daredevil 164 expose. After recovering from his injuries from the Hulk, Daredevil is visited by Ben Urich of the Daily Bugle, who shares that he knows Daredevil's secret, that Daredevil is in fact Matt Murdock. From here, we then get a retelling of Daredevil #1, that Matt's father was a boxer who works for the Fixer, who set up his matches. Matt was blinded by radioactive waste, gave him extra senses, and then when his father refused to throw a fight, his father was murdered by the Fixer, and that caused Matt to become Daredevil in order to avenge him. Urich, after hearing all this, agrees to bury the story. All right, your thoughts, Stojer?
I thought it was a good excuse for Matt to, or Frank Miller rather, to redraw Daredevil's origin in this issue. So I thought I like that. The Madison Square Garden seems to be upping the scale though of like Jack Murdock. I don't. Again, I'm only reading this volume, and I don't have good knowledge of the way they told things in other Daredevil epics. But just in the lexicon of his dad, I never thought of it as a Madison Square Garden fight. I thought of it as like a local kind of thing that people were betting on. But Madison Square Garden is pretty big. You know, I think it's interesting that a thing of their times. It's like I wanted to tell Ben he can't smoke in the hospital, but I guess back then they probably could. And
Hell, the
it's a
doctors were
great
smoking.
moment in the character development of Ben just burying that story for Matt, and kind of seeing the greater good that things are going to do. I thought that maybe it's because of the dream sequences and things like that, that Miller's art looked like almost like a little bit like he was evoking the Gene Colan or some of the things before it. Like on that first page, that didn't jump out at me as Miller right away because it looked so similar to what we got earlier in the issue, in the volume rather, with very dark sort of Avengers there. And it's interesting too, and I don't know this for certain again because I haven't read all Marvel 1978, 80, and previous, but there's no Spider-Man here, right? And that's I think because they haven't really developed a friendship or relationship at this time, right? Like reading this through lenses in 2026 and everything that I've read over the last 30 years or so, I would expect Spider-Man at his bedside before Power Man and Iron Fist, but that's not the way things were back then, because I don't think they interacted that much, and you get much more of like the Avengers, Fantastic Four, things like that that have had experiences with Daredevil. Although I don't know where those experiences really are, other than maybe the Daredevil comics.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, to that point, we saw the interactions with Daredevil and the Fantastic Four in Fantastic Four Volume 5, right? That was they're fighting Doctor Doom together. I think Daredevil and Spider-Man, their first real interactions is around the death of Jean DeWolf, I think.
Yep.
Or at least that's.
That's at least the one that I really think of. I mean, I'm sure that there was some sort of team up where they're in the same book or something. But as far as them like interacting, and being together, that's what I always think of as the beginning of that.
Oh gosh, sorry. Think of them teaming up together. I mean, Spider-Man shows up in Daredevil's first issue. Daredevil shows up in Amazing Spider-Man 16, right? Early on, they don't develop a rapport. They don't develop a friendship. Right. But yeah. Let's see. As for this one, kind of as you said, it's a great retelling of his origin story. I didn't really need a retelling, but at the time it came out, we've talked about this before. you don't get those early issues again. They're out, they're printed, they're done. There's really no reprints unless they happen in the monthly issues. So from that standpoint, I'm okay with it. You got to retell the origin every now and then. But I liked the way they did it. Is they tied in the origin retelling perfectly with this Ben Urich storyline and in a meaningful way. And it updates his origin to be a little bit more gritty than the original, but all the story beats are still there, right? All the important stuff is still there. So really well done for what it is.
Mm.
All right, let's go to 165, Arms of the Octopus. Daredevil learns of a plot to steal some adamantium, and he learns that Heather Glenn's inherited business, Glenn Industries, is somehow involved. Daredevil tries to disrupt the theft, but is met and defeated by Dr. Octopus, who is stealing the adamantium to reforge his metal arms to be made out of this unbreakable metal. Well, after tracking down Doc Ock, once again, Daredevil succeeds in tricking the villain into electrocuting himself. All right, Stojr, what are your thoughts on this one?
So, just want to point out, Miller gets co-plotting credits here, so leaning into a little bit of him telling some of these stories. Otto's really good in this issue. Like, I could have done without him being so Spider-Man obsessed. I know that's the way that these villains are, but like, if you just took those word balloons out of this, like, it's a good villain plot. He's got he's a menace for Daredevil in this issue. I thought it was all really well done. I don't really understand. The electrical shock looked amazing, as well as like all of the arms kind of coming through on page 203, and then this page on 205 that you have the shock. I thought those were really cool looking panels throughout this issue. And then my last thought is, like, I don't really know why the paper's printing Black Widow's like travel plans. Like, I don't, I just don't get that. And a note for earlier, like, I think it is odd the Hercules Black Widow stuff that we talked about when Matt and her kiss, because like, there's no context for like what Black Widow's doing in this volume. And look, maybe if we read previous volumes, we'd have a little bit of better understanding. But having owned and at least skimmed through a lot of the Avengers stuff, I don't remember a deep subplot of Hercules and Black Widow, and maybe I'm just missing it.
I think,
or maybe that's the point, right? That Hercules has got more is thinking more about it than anybody else. But
I think that was I got the impression anyway that was something that was hinted at in the Champions, but we don't have that, and I've never read the Champions.
There we go. All the more reason why we need a Champions epic. Let's go.
Let's do it. Even though I'm not that excited about the Champions, I want it all. Come on.
Yeah.
Give me the weird, obscure stuff. Although that's the problem, is the weird, obscure stuff doesn't sell. It's just weirdos like me who want it.
They did make a complete collection of it. It's just before my time of collecting things. I think it's only like one volume. I don't think there was a ton of Champions material.
I think there's only like 17 issues of it, something like that. I read something the other day that you know what? It was in Curtis's Discord. A guy started a new blog. I think his name was Kevin. There's a link to it in the Epic Collection Discord, and he was talking about his early collecting and so forth, and I think he brought up Champions number 17, and he said it was his first non-Spider-Man thing that he got. So I think that's where I'm thinking of it from. Anyway, shout outs to Kevin. Hope his blog goes well. Let's see. As for my thoughts on this issue, I'm not sure I understood the connection between the theft, Glenn Industries, and Doc Ock. I mean, I know why Doc Ock wants the adamantium. That makes sense. But how exactly that connected with Heather Glenn and her company, I have no idea. Otherwise, I think you hit on everything I wanted to say. I just had something about the electrocution, but that was really well done. All right, let's go to Daredevil number 166, Till Death Do Us Part. I had this in my notes, but I forgot to double check it. Yes, okay, look at the corner box. So on 165, we have that old corner box. We get a revised corner box by Frank Miller. New design there. Okay, so on the day of Foggy Nelson's wedding, Gladiator returns and holds a bunch of kids hostage in a museum because he wants someone to fight, as you do. Naturally, Matt hears about it, and he fights Gladiator as Daredevil, defeats the villain, and then makes it to Foggy's wedding just in time. All right, Stoger.
So corner boxes are great. I will say that the old corner box is also great. So we're swapping greatness for greatness here.
I miss
In the
corner
box
boxes. They don't do them
arena. Yeah,
anymore.
I think not to get ahead of myself. So I believe that the new Daredevil volume will also be bringing back corner boxes.
Let's get it across the line. Come on, Marvel. That's your
And
thing.
and since I'm promoting the new Daredevil volume, I'm blanking on the writer's name and the artist. I'll have to look it up while we're talking. But I follow her on TikTok, so she's been talking about some of her like writing tips and what she does and things like that. But the fitting for Daredevil, they're doing a blind bag for the number one. So Marvel started doing these blind bags with Endgame. They had a little bit of a problem with some of the quality. Apparently, some of them got bent up and things like that. So they delayed the Daredevil one at least by a week or two. So I think it comes out like April 1st now, as opposed to in March. But there'll be a blind bag. There's corner boxes, and I think they said that maybe the corner box changes every issue or something like
Okay.
that. So
I'm all right with that.
anyway, so till death do us part. I didn't know Foggy was getting married.
Yep.
So which again, no fault of the writers. It's just we're not reading the previous volumes, or at least not reading them back to back with this. The Matt and his girlfriend like quickly fall back in love. Like it feels like they went from like estranged to just completely in love, which is a little quick, but whatever. I love the motion art on the second page on 210, with Matt doing his sort of workouts and things like that. I mean, I'm a sucker for all that stuff. I like the Gladiator as a character more and more as I read some of these stories. He's a tragic villain. Like there's obviously something wrong with him, right? Like he's not just doing this because he's a bad guy or wants money or whatever. He's clearly mentally ill, and that breeds a little bit of sympathy. But it breeds a bit of like there's a line, right? You can only have so much sympathy for the guy murdering people, right? Like so you have to work those things out. And I think it provides, especially in the context of Daredevil Matt being a lawyer, it provides this interesting dynamic because that's a big part of their job. The fraternity brother scene on page 215 reminded me of It's a Wonderful Life, maybe just because it's Christmas time recently and I've watched it. But the Hee Haw guy from It's a Wonderful Life, and these suits are just ridiculous.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I know it was like 79, 80 here, but just completely off the wall silly. Um,
Is this the
I
start of Foggy being the butt of all jokes in Daredevil? Because he wasn't like that in Volume 1 at the start of this.
Maybe I'm not sure. And it's funny because like they make little jokes like he's fat, like he doesn't look that big,
Yeah.
So, I also like with the joke at the end of the issue with the ring. It would have been nice if they like kind of penciled in like just a little line on his finger or something like that.
They
Because
did.
uh, oh,
215.
they did.
Yep,
Am I
there's only
missing it?
one panel. Only one panel where you
Oh,
can
I
see
see
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
It's
colored it
so
the same as
faint.
its flesh.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because I was looking for it in the lower part of the page where they're not showing it maybe because his hands in his pocket
Yep.
when they're showing it.
Yeah, they hide his hand
But
everywhere
that is
else
great.
except that one.
Yeah, yeah, that is good. That is good. What did you think?
It's a fun issue, seemingly inconsequential, or at least that's what I thought at first. But the actions of the Gladiator in taking the kids hostage in the museum is actually going to be an important plot point for some things later on, particularly with Daredevil's life as lawyer Matt Murdock. I am curious as to what happened to the Gladiator between his first appearance and now, because we haven't read the in-between issues. I have previously read Volume 1 of Daredevil, and I remember the Gladiator being a tailor, and like his theory was the clothes make the man, and so he's going to be important and strong or whatever with this gladiator suit. I don't know when he became insane. I don't recall that, so I would have liked a little bit of context. But otherwise, I enjoyed it.
And by the way, connecting this, they do have Gladiator in the Netflix show, and he is a tailor, and I forget the exact backstory, but like I mean, I think he's also Gladiator in that show too. So there, so I think like they play off of this, that he's being rehabilitated on that Netflix show, but he has a hand in developing Matt's costume, and they inevitably get into a fight during that show. It's been a number of years since I've watched the Netflix episodes, but he's a big enough character that they keep around here.
Gosh, my encoding has been overloaded, and it has been for a long time. And I think the stream has been paused for a long time. I'm very worried about that. I don't know if audio is coming through or not. Trying to see if I can turn my settings down real quick. Sorry to do this.
No, actually,
is it working on YouTube?
The video. The audio is coming through, but the video's paused, it looks like.
Fun. Let me see if I do kind of quasi have it pulled up here, but so I think like they play off of this, and then you can hear the reverberation. Let's see if I did something to maybe fix it. It might take a second for that to come through.
Yeah, it's starting to unlock from what I can see. I just like how it had me with a weird face on that pause for however long it had me pausing.
That's always the way, right? As soon as the video pauses, it's always you're like mid-sneeze. You're like, ah. Of course, now that I pulled that face, it's going to be stuck on that for a while. All right, let's power through and hope that the final video, as it gets recorded and saved on YouTube, is something better. If nothing else, audio. Listen to the audio podcast, and I don't know what I'm going to do to fix this, because I feel like this is the worst we've had problems with this. And we've had previous.
I don't know if it would help if I don't know if it's on my end at all. If it would help if I switched over to anything different, but
I don't see why, because I'm just pulling your video via Discord, which that shouldn't be changing anything with overloading my computer on my end. Maybe it's just I still have that operating system update that I haven't done, and that's just overloading stuff. I don't know. All right, I've got a no prize I'm going to give this one. The Makes Perfect Sense Award. I'm giving this to Matt Murdock's interior decorating. When I first saw this panel on the screen that maybe you cannot see, this is on page 211. At first, I wondered why Mark Miller was drawing Matt's apartment with a bunch of sculptures in it. That just seemed weird. And then it dawned on me, oh yeah, he's a blind man. The only art he can really enjoy is sculptures, right? He can't really enjoy a painting. I mean, I suppose he could touch a painting and feel all the different paint, but you're not going to see the image. You're going to feel the globs of paint. This also begs the question, do you think Matt Murdock might have an Alicia Masters original? Is there any connection there? Yeah.
I mean, they had to have done that at some point. I guess we'll have to... I don't know where, but yeah, I mean, that would make a lot of sense.
And whenever I think about Alicia Masters being a blind sculptress, I envision in my head jokes that were made in Twisted Toy Fair Theater. Did you ever read any of those, Stojr?
No, what is that?
Okay, so you know Wizard Magazine, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Wizard Magazine also had a sister publication called Toy Fair, where they did the same thing for comics, but for toys, right? And they had a feature called Twisted Toy Fair Theater, where they would set up action figures, usually superhero action figures, and tell stupid, funny little stories with them, and they were hilarious. And basically, it's the forerunner to the TV show Robot Chicken. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, envision Robot Chicken, but earlier time period and just comic book action figure stories. They constantly make jokes about Alicia being a blind sculptress, and all of her things that she makes is just kind of trash and disgusting because she doesn't know what she's looking at. Anyway, all right, should we move on? I'm worried YouTube is a lost cause, and we're just relying on audio now.
Yeah, it seems like it's
Completely frozen.
locked up and somewhat coming through. Um,
No prize. I'm gonna give this one. Oh, hey,
yeah, I
just
mean
caught
the
up to the
audio
no
still.
prize.
Yeah, we're up to the no prize. I did see the panel flip over in the comic viewer for that, but relatively on time.
Yeah,
Um, but our streams seemed like they're locking up for some reason.
we're just absolutely frozen. I don't know how I'm gonna. I don't know how I'm gonna fix that. Um, video encode. I wonder if I switch to. No, I don't want to mess with too much stuff in the middle of doing this. Um, yeah, okay. We might just need to blast. I had such high hopes that this was going to be a good one too, because the stuff we're working with is good, but of course the video has to go and screw up. Oh, hey, we got it. Oh, no, never mind. I was going to say we've got it. We've got a chat. That's you.
I thought I saw 3 viewers in there, so that's why I dropped something in the chat.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, if anyone is watching this live, sorry. If you're watching this in video, sorry. Sorry. One of these days, we'll figure out how to do a podcast. All right. Let's go to 167. This is The Mauler. David Michelinie takes over the writing on this issue. While Matt and his girlfriend Heather are attending a corporate party thrown by a CEO named Cord, an armored man called the Mauler disrupts the party and attacks Cord. Matt sneaks away to become Daredevil, and he scares the Mauler off. Well, Daredevil later confronts Cord, who claims that the Mauler is a disgruntled ex-employee, but when Dee confronts the Mauler, he learns that the Mauler was actually a retiree who was denied his pension because of a computer error at the company. Well, the Mauler gets his revenge on Cord, but is then killed when he is hit by an experimental cannon. The rather short story is then filled in by a brief vignette of Daredevil's powers. All right, Stojr, I know you had some stuff you wanted to touch upon this one. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I immediately picked up on the fact that the tease for the previous issue said a very special next issue, Daredevil and the Punisher, and there is no Punisher in this issue. So I started Googling and asking ChatGPT, like, what happened here? And apparently, there was an original plan for a two-part crossover or issues with Daredevil and the Punisher, and they were going to be taking down a drug ring that was pushing angel dust to kids at school. So when it got submitted to the Comic Code Authority, it actually got rejected, and they felt that it was basically the depiction of drug use was too realistic for the kids, and it was too graphic with having the kids in there. So they needed a last minute fill in issue, so they brought in David Michelinie to do this issue. And Jim Shooter, I guess at the time, used this as an excuse to move Mackenzie off the title, and then give Miller the writing control as well as the art duties. Now that storyline was tweaked and adapted and will show up later in 183 to 184 apparently. Some little behind the scenes stuff where somebody gets moved out here because of this, and you get the Comic Code Authority pushing for some things here. As far as the story itself by David, it feels surprisingly modern in a world where AI is taking people's jobs, right? This is feels very similar to that. There was a little bit of silliness where like melting the wallet would somehow delete everything about the person. Like, I don't know if that was just kind of expressing his, anger towards that boss or whatever, but like they sort of almost treated that too real. Like, all right, I'm going to take all your credit cards and your IDs and your wallet, and that's really going to get you. And it's like, well, you can have that. I'll just get new ones tomorrow. Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, I thought this was a good issue for what it was. It just felt a little weird in the context of the tease from the last issue. I also don't know why like Matt was rushing out of the party, like why he got so angry at the beginning of it. With I guess I was kind of sort of felt like Heather was trying to get him to work somewhere else, and he got really upset about that because he didn't want to be put in a situation where he's basically being recruited. But like, it just felt a little weird. Like it's like he got so mad about it he wants to leave the party right away, and
I
then that all kind of gets washed away because the Mauler shows up. But
yeah, the way I read that was when the guy was trying to recruit him. Matt wasn't mad about that. It's just that the guy had already hinted that he was engaging in some underhanded activities, and he was looking for a lawyer that would aid him in that. And I think that's what offended Matt, or at least that's how I read it.
okay.
Yeah, let's see. Page 228, third panel, he says, you could name your own salary. There'd be plenty of other benefits. Ones the friendly folks at the IRS wouldn't have to know about, if you catch my drift. So,
Yeah, I guess. But
yeah,
I mean, Matt deals with a lot of criminals. Like that's like pretty light touch there.
sure.
So anyway, but yeah, I'm with you. That's probably why. But it just felt like it felt very, I don't know. Like it almost felt like an overreaction. Like
Sure.
you just say no. You're already at the party, but like to feel like you have to rush out. Like even if you just left, like it's like, hey, Heather, this guy's an asshole. Like let's get out of here. But I don't know. Anyway, your
Yeah.
thoughts?
I honestly really enjoyed this. The story had a lot more depth than my summary would suggest. The Mauler being a clerk who was forced in retirement because of computers and then loses his retirement also because of computers. You can't help but just sympathize with the man. I could complain about the short story at the end about Daredevil's powers being filler, and they are, but I'm not too bothered by it. I'm kind of glad that Michelini and Miller didn't try to draw the main story out. I thought it was just the perfect length. Even for it being a filler. I like the cover art too. It stands out with the bright blue digital border and the red of Daredevil in the middle of it. It pops. I enjoyed it, and so to bring this out as a fill-in issue, I thought was rather impressive, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got another no prize award for this one. The award for most food-based superpower descriptor goes to the various attempts at describing Daredevil's super sensitivity. Twice now I've seen the descriptor that he can tell how many grains of salt are on a pretzel, and that this exact phrase is also found in the character Bible that Mark Miller wrote. However, I think there's a flaw to this power. What if he doesn't eat the whole pretzel? How does he know? All right. Enough of my shenanigans. Let's go to 168. I think I've abandoned all hope of the video on this one. God, that annoys and pisses me off, but for such a great volume too.
Could could you? Is it YouTube or is it Discord or?
I think it's my computer. I think it's my computer's using too much CPU, and I am unable to plug my computer directly into the Ethernet right now because of my mobility problems, and I wonder if my wife is awake and is streaming something on the Wi-Fi. Not to blame my wife; she's not at fault for this. This is my fault, but I think it's a combination of those things.
Do you? Yeah, I mean, my only suggestion might be if you have like if you have like Google Home as your Wi-Fi, or if you have like an Xfinity app or whatever you have, sometimes you can go in and prioritize a device. So you might be able to go into the device list of what's on your Wi-Fi, and just tell it to prioritize like your computer, and maybe that'll help.
Let's give it a try. Let's see if I can do that. I don't know if I can with my Wi-Fi. This makes for a great entertaining thing, right? Tech issues. We're gonna add that
Yes.
to um, we're gonna add that to what we do: read, rate, and review big collected editions, and solve your tech problems, right? Let's see. Online clients. I have 17 online
Well,
clients.
while you're trying to do that, why don't I talk a little bit about the 168, right?
Sure, go for it.
I'll steal your notes for the summary. And kind of give that. So yeah, we have Frank Miller taking over both writing and art duties, and immediately introduces one of the most important characters into Daredevil's history, which is Elektra here. You had looked up. Apparently, Miller based the character of Elektra off of Will Eisner's Sans Serif, the Spirit, and mixed a bit of in a bit of real life bodybuilder named Lisa Loin. I'm probably mispronouncing one of those words. But at the
Yeah,
same time, Miller points out the mythological Elektra, daughter of Agamemnon, who aids her brother Orestes.
Orestes.
See, this is not
This
the
is the
one
one
I
I should
should
be
have
covering, right?
taken over.
Here, I might have this sorted out. Maybe I don't know. Say, okay. Do you want me to take over?
Yeah, yeah. Please
Sorry.
finish the historical history
All the
teacher here.
ancient stuff here. Okay, so when I was looking some stuff up, Miller apparently based the character of Elektra off of Will Eisner's Sans Serif from The Spirit, and he mixed in a bit of a real life bodybuilder named Lisa Leon. At the same time, Miller also points to the mythological figure Elektra, who's the daughter of Agamemnon. Elektra aids her brother Orestes in killing their mother Clytemnestra in order to avenge the death of Agamemnon by Clytemnestra. She kills her husband. It's said in several different Greek plays, the ancient plays. So we get that story several times. As for becoming a writer, editor Denny O'Neil did a lot to mentor Miller at this time, and at least Klaus Janson said that Miller and O'Neil collaborated on some of the plots. While Okay, and now we get into the. Sorry, I was just double checking my thing. I think it is set up to where I have given it high priority, but I don't know if it's actually working.
Yeah, I'll watch the YouTube. It'll probably take, if it does anything, it'll probably take a few minutes to do. I mean, it really depends if your CPU usage is spiked. It may not make a difference. It might be your computer trying to encode it and send it out versus the actual network traffic. But we'll try and solve whatever problem we can.
Yep. Okay. Well, here I'll just go along with this here. Let's see. For the issue itself, we see that while trying to hunt down a witness to a murder, Daredevil's interrogation of Turk is interrupted by a bounty hunter named Elektra. We then get a flashback where we learn that Elektra was Matt's first love in college, but the death of her father after a failed kidnapping saw her return to Europe and become an outlaw bounty hunter. Back in the present, Daredevil tracks down his witness, but so has Elektra. The two are then forced to work together to capture him, but Matt keeps him in the U.S. legal system, and Elektra's unable to capture him and bring him to Europe. All right, Stozier, your thoughts while I tech.
Yeah, so I, obviously enjoyed this issue. It's a great introduction. It's all very new and different with Elektra coming into the story. You get this extended college flashback scene with their sort of origin and why they're together and why they're not together. I think all that sort of is buttoned up very well to kind of introduce a character and slip them into the history of Daredevil with it's like, here's why we never mentioned her before type of setup here. I thought it was weird that Matt's talking about his abilities with somebody he just met, but then again, Matt's a player and he's going to do whatever he can to get the girl. So that plays into things a little bit. Also, no one knows how to properly deal with hostages back then, apparently. Like Matt's yelling this sort of like hit him low olive oil thing, but she's like tied up in a chair. Like I don't understand like where she's getting like the leverage to do that. And then I guess the dad is killed by the cops because they see a silhouette of a potential bad guy and they shoot through the window. Again, like cops are just blindly firing into a hostage situation for no reason. So, um, other than that, this is a scene that has has repeated, right? Like they in the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, I'm pretty sure that they went through this whole type of thing for Elektra's origin and sort of set that up for her inevitable spin-off movie that I did not watch with what's it, Jennifer
Jennifer
Gardner.
Garner,
Even
yeah.
though I was a pretty big Jennifer Gardner fan at that point in time with what was that TV show she had?
Lost.
No, no, she was on.
Oh,
She was
Alias.
on Alias. That's it. Yeah. So that was a pretty good show. Anyway, what were your thoughts beyond the recap of this issue?
I enjoyed it. We have consistently had some great little one-shot issues, and this one is not an exception. The hint at Matt's past with this woman who has not become his enemy, or who will become his enemy, it's intriguing. The personal feelings that the two share for one another, and then they later become these enemies, it makes for good drama. The fact that he confided in Elektra and that she knows Matt's powers is also going to be interesting going into the future. The art continues to be great. Having all of the scenes in the present set in a rainstorm makes it feel gritty and real, and that's fun. And I also find it interesting that Elektra is clearly labeled as a bounty hunter here. I always thought of her as an assassin, so I'm curious as to when that shift in her profession happens, or maybe I was just wrong. I don't know.
I guess what's the technical difference between an assassin and a bounty hunter? Like a bounty hunter, I guess maybe goes after things and retrieves things in addition to people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I thought of it was a bounty hunter is retrieving a person live, whereas assassination is killing them. Although I guess a bounty hunter could be collecting a bounty to kill someone. So I guess
Yeah.
they could be one and the same in that sense.
Yeah, I could see a bounty hunter being the more well-rounded or all-inclusive thing, right? Where an assassin is just going to kill people. That's it. They're done. A bounty hunter will kill people, retrieve people, or maybe retrieve an object or something like that.
Or maybe bounty hunter is more acceptable by the comics code at this time than assassin. And if they just had a little brush in with the comics code, maybe a little worried about bringing in assassin.
Yeah, it could be true. I'm also interjecting my Star Wars knowledge here because there's been so many bounty hunters in Star Wars. I'm trying to relate what they do to this stuff. So all good.
Okay, shall we continue on to 169?
Let's do it.
All right. This is Devils. Bullseye has developed a tumor which has made him go insane and to see every person as Daredevil. He escaped imprisonment just before he was to have surgery to remove the tumor, and he goes on a killing spree. Daredevil tracks him down and stops him, but is left with the moral conundrum of letting him die or saving Bullseye's life and bringing him to justice, which might allow Bullseye to eventually kill again. All right, your thoughts on this one, Stoger?
So it's got some trademark Miller TV panels in here. If you've ever read Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, there's a lot of like them showing people being interviewed or on TV throughout that. I found that interesting. I think Miller likes to draw things of like you're watching TV and sort of put you into that mode, which makes a lot of sense. They're sort of pushing the envelope here of like maturity on page. I know we can't really bring this stuff up and or even show it to things, but the sort of silhouette of Heather on page 285. I think they're trying to make things look a little bit more provocative there, with still not doing so, not showing anything. Sort of the act of showing things without showing things type of thing. Bullseye is like a wild animal. And I think we said this before, and I think like the idea of like him just being able to like murder people and sort of going around and killing everyone around him. I think it's a very interesting thing for him. It's almost like there's, he's set up to be like his version of the Joker, or Spider-Man's Carnage, right? But he's a lot smarter here, and we get the explanation of why he sort of, fell into a mess of crying at the end of the last thing. Whether this is a retcon because Miller didn't like that, what happened to that character, or if that was always the plan in some ways, I'm not really sure. But I like the idea of like there's this tumor, and it's he's seeing Daredevil everywhere. It makes for some cool kind of art. Now I wouldn't want this to continue forever. I'm glad they wrap it up in basically one issue, but it's an interesting dynamic. There's also the idea at the end of this issue of like Daredevil not letting Bullseye die on the train tracks, which in the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, I think it kind of starts off with, and I don't remember how much he could have saved the guy, but basically there's a guy that gets killed on the train tracks, and what's interesting is that it's one of those decisions that the movie made to have a bad guy die on those train tracks. I think the bad guy that dies on the train tracks is the guy who fixes the fight for his dad to his dad getting killed or something like that. But it shows a very different take here, where Daredevil is saving a villain, and it's going to introduce some real angst later, because Bullseye's not like he's going to kill again. Like he's not like, just because he's saved and in jail doesn't mean he's reformed or anything like that. So going back to that Joker Batman dynamic, where's the line here, right? Like, where do you become part of the problem if you're not going to put this wild animal down, so to speak? So it's an interesting question, and with the added layer of him being a lawyer, which plays into a lot of this too, with his obligations to the legal system.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, very much the same. Yeah, clearly moral conundrum, but it makes sense as to why he falls on the line of the law, because he is a lawyer. He's very much let the justice system take its place. Everyone has their rights to a fair trial, all that stuff. So great story. I enjoyed it. Resolves the quibble I had about issue 166, where Bullseye seems to be out of character. Oh, he had a brain tumor. Okay, we'll explain it that way. And I think Miller continues to create this great mood by having that battle inside a theater. All the fighting feels really realistic, that these are human beings, not just big, super-powered hulks, right? So I enjoy that. I appreciate that. I've got one last no prize. I think this might be the last one I have for the volume. I'm calling this the Amigos, Amigos, Amigos Award for the double-page spread we get here at the start of the issue, with Bullseye envisioning all the people of New York as Daredevil. And really only because I couldn't help but think of the film The Three Amigos when I saw that double-page spread. So, see, I've seen some movies. I haven't seen Aliens, but I've seen The Three Amigos.
Yeah, you're going to have to watch Aliens. That's...
One of these days. One of these days. All right.
It's been a while since I've seen Three Amigos. I don't remember the plot points in that, so I might have to rewatch that. So
yeah, I mean, do you even know what a plethora is? All right, sorry. Okay, let's get this train wreck rolling. God. And we're getting to some of the best stuff too. I'm so upset that our videos died. All right, Daredevil number 170, The Kingpin Must Die. This is interesting in that Miller successfully poached a Spider-Man villain. Apparently no one cared for the Kingpin at this time, but Miller found a use for him because he needed a gang leader for his story. Okay, so the Kingpin had retired to Japan and has offered to give information to the U.S. Attorneys General about his former lieutenants, right? Well, his wife, Vanessa, recognizes the need for legal representation for all this, and so she decides to fly to New York to hire Nelson and Murdoch. Naturally, what other lawyers do you go to? Well, the crime lords of New York had been plotting to kill the Kingpin, so when Natasha arrives, she's kidnapped. And when Daredevil begins his investigation, he walks in on one of the crime lords hiring the recently released Bullseye as their assassin. All right, Stojr, your thoughts? Uh-oh, I've lost you. Your audio's gone. Can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Sorry, I muted myself to check the YouTube thing, and I forgot to unmute myself. So, and the YouTube was still frozen, but it seemed like the audio was still going through. So,
Okay, well, it's something.
so this is the first time we see the Kingpin since Amazing Spider-Man 197. I was checking this to see the last time he was around. Now 197 is somewhere in the neighborhood of 78 to 80. So this isn't like, Kingpin was put in the toy box for, 5-10 years or anything like that. This is relatively soon afterwards. But according to my quick and dirty research, that was the last time he was around, where he basically defeats Spider-Man, and him and Vanessa kind of disappear. So that he'll stop doing bad things and be with his wife that he's in love with. I also think that the dynamic between Vanessa and Kingpin may feel a little cheesy in the comics, but they really lean into this in the Netflix series, and it's done very well. And I think that the idea that you have this man, this troubled crime lord who has this horrible past and is just a horrible person, but you almost see a glimpse of redemption in his in his love for his wife. I mean, heck, they put this is the main driving force in the Spider-Verse movie. If you've seen the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse. You haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse?
No. I so upset with the Spider-Verse comic books that I just didn't. I couldn't bring myself to see the movie.
All right, you got to watch Into the Spider. We're gonna have to have like a movie segment on this show. But yeah, I mean, basically the plot of Into the Spider-Verse is him trying to save his wife, which is leads into the interdimensional stuff. But anyway, and where that relationship between Vanessa and Kingpin go in the comics much later on, it's very interesting to see the earlier stuff and what is here, and purposely trying not to spoil some of the Bendis storylines and things like that happen. My last comment is, like, while I enjoy Turk as an informant, how useful is he going to be if there's this giant kind of interaction and show every time Daredevil goes to him? Like, the idea with the informant is, like, nobody's supposed to know you're talking to the informant so that they can get information next time. But if everybody knows that you're talking to the informant, what's the point? While it makes for good scenes in a comic to have some little action or some sort of fun little scene, it doesn't make logical sense, to have a well to keep going back to.
Yeah. That is a fair criticism, which admittedly I had not really considered. Let's see. I personally prefer short one and done stories, but I don't mind a long story arc every now and then. So I am kind of excited to see where a longer storyline like this is going to go. And this seems like the classic crime drama that I was expecting from this run, that we're finally in it now. Miller has some great verticality with some of his panels in this issue, something which of course suits the New York very well with its tall buildings. And I just had it on my, I had just turned to a page, but we start to get the picture of one of those tall buildings, which will eventually become the Kingpin's building that he's in. It almost feels like you set the stage whenever you end up seeing that panel, that you always know the Kingpin's going to be involved. We're not quite there yet, but it's going to become that. It almost feels like it's its own character in the book. So that's starting here. Although I have to admit, I do not like how the Kingpin is such a baby face in this issue. I'm not sure how you solve that, how you fix that, because there's kind of a fine line between Infant and Winston Churchill. But since reading this issue, I came upon an interview with Frank Miller where he actually speaks to this. there is a reason why the Kingpin looks so strange in this issue. Apparently, Miller was talking to John Byrne at the time. John Byrne was doing his X-Men run. And Byrne gave him the idea that when he brought the Kingpin into his book, that he should draw the Kingpin with clean lines, just like John Romita Sr. did. All right, just for one issue. But then afterwards, bring in that shading that's typical of how Miller draws. In fact, Miller even makes that transition at the tail end of the book, and I put this panel in the screen, but YouTube's not coming through. But anyway, on the very final page, on page 317, you see the Kingpin in his baby face. Then he goes down, lights up his cigarette, and then comes back up and is lit from below. And there you've got now the Miller version of the Kingpin, where he's going to be dark, gritty, shady, and so forth. And Miller's version is going to look a lot better, a lot less baby-faced. So that I just thought it was so weird how the Kingpin was drawn. Miller's so good at everything else, and yet there we go. There was a reason for it. So anyway, well done.
That's a pretty good reason.
Yeah, nice.
I like it.
Yeah. All right. Should we keep on keeping on?
Let's keep moving.
I don't think we have any other choice at this point. So, all right, Daredevil number 171. And here we finally have that note that says "At Last Monthly" on the cover. And honestly, until that, I hadn't noticed that Daredevil was bi-monthly. It makes sense. Daredevil was not in a good place until Miller came on and changed the tone. So it's going monthly indicates the success that the book was having, right? They're finally making money off of this one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anyway, Daredevil manages to escape last issue's predicament alive, but he wants the files that the Kingpin has on his men. So he disguises himself as an assassin for hire named Shades and goes to Josie's bar looking for the Kingpin. Ironically, it's Turk who brings him in, but the Kingpin eventually figures out that Shades is Daredevil and defeats him, and he sets Turk up to kill Daredevil. Meanwhile, the Kingpin makes a deal with the mobsters who kidnapped his wife, but when he goes to retrieve her, a building falls on Vanessa and seemingly kills her. All right, Stojr, what are your thoughts here?
That was a great action-packed issue. I think that the building falling visuals at the end are especially strong. They're simple yet convey the anarchy and carnage that would be if you had all these steel girders kind of falling down. I thought the Kingpin's plan was pretty interesting. Like, you're going to open up this case and it's going to kind of disable everybody around. And that's how he's going to walk into this trap and be okay. I do read this issue and immediately think no body, no death. So, for the reader, I am not worried about Vanessa, but, obviously it's going to have some huge implications for, you can see immediately how it would have huge implications for Wilson as it goes through this. And my other thought is that there's a stereotypical bad guy outfit in this issue again of, getting it from the Uncle Ben murderer store. So, that sort of, what are they called? Scully caps, I think, if I remember correctly. Like,
I don't know.
What are those little like?
I would think flat cap, but I mean,
flat cap.
Yeah, is that what you're talking about? This is page 323.
Some sort of name. Maybe it is flat cap. I'm not sure, but like, the green flat cap, the jacket, and the brighter pants, I guess. It looks like we're chasing. In fact, with the this is the issue 200's in here. I think that's the cover to issue 200.
Amazing Spider-Man 200.
Amazing Spider-Man 200, where you have the Uncle Ben murderer kind of revisited type of thing, which is right around the same time period too. So I think it's just a trope where that's the way everybody drew those stereotypical burglars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoyed this. I don't know if I can really add much more on this. I didn't realize that this was the first meeting between Daredevil and the Kingpin when I first read it, but I guess here we go. It starts everything. Here, what have you got there?
I was just showing
Oh,
the
oh,
murderer.
the the burglar from Amazing Spider-Man and what he's dressed in. Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much exactly the same
basically
of
the same
what
outfit.
Matt's in.
So
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, it's all good. I don't think I need to add anything more, right? I like that we have Josie's Bar. We keep coming back to Turk, even if that's somewhat problematic. I'm just enjoying it. All right, let's go to 172. Now that we're purely an audio podcast, I don't know why I'm keeping up with the pictures here, but whatever, just in case. Okay, 172, Gang War, and I gotta ask, Stojr, how many times have we had Marvel Comics called Gang War? We had a Spider-Man event in 2023 called that. There was the Gang War with the Hobgoblin in Amazing Spider-Man 284 to 288. That was in 1986 or 7. So, and I did not mean to do the middle school meme. But that is just after these Daredevil issues. Have we had more Gang Wars?
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely the three that come to mind. I'm not aware of any more, but yeah, it does seem to be a term that just kind of keeps getting reused. It's becoming, similar to Inferno for X-Men, something that we just kind of keep going back to.
All right, well, let's see. In this one, Daredevil manages to escape death by drowning and goes after the Kingpin's files once again to take down the mob bosses, but the Kingpin is ahead of everything. He eventually gets Bullseye to turn to his side, he regains control of the criminal underworld, and in the end, he manipulates Daredevil to take his files and thus rid him of his rivals for power. All right, Stojr, what are your thoughts?
So we talked a little bit before the podcast about like whether it's modern epics or classic epics that we group stories together versus kind of talking about individual issues. This definitely becomes one of the candidates to talk about as a group, right? The
Sure.
last issue, this issue, and at least the issue after this. I think it's a really strong storyline. You get this introduction of these Morlocks, I mean vagabonds, living in the sewers. Um, is 1980s New York City just like the San Francisco of today, right? Where you just
I
have
think
like all
so.
of these different homeless people, and in this case, living in the sewers. During this time, everybody thought that everybody's just living in the sewers. You got Ninja Turtles down there, you got Morlocks, you got the Vagabonds. But reading ahead, we know why they introduced these particular characters here. It'll make a difference into where some of this stuff is going here. There's some nice panel layouts in this book. I thought that um, the we mentioned it before because Miller uses it, but like sort of the left hand side, very tall, almost building sized panel, followed by whatever he wants to fill in the rest of the space on the page with. I thought is pretty interesting. Those are on 350, 351, 348 also. So there's a couple pages in this issue that they're doing that for. I also thought that the fight with Bullseye and Daredevil is pretty brutal. I guess Matt has some kinks with all the girls that he's with, so he's going to be able to survive getting choked out a little bit longer than Bullseye can. So, good for him. No kink shaming here. Um, and the epilogue actually makes sense as an epilogue. We see Vanessa, around and get a sense of like where she might be with that introduction of the vagabonds earlier in the book. What'd you think?
Um, Honestly, what a fantastic twist ending, I think. The Kingpin defeats Daredevil by giving him exactly what he wants, right? He wants that information, and now the Kingpin wants to give it to him because he's going to get rid of his rivals. It's brilliant. Also, the way that Miller crafted Bullseye's position to be one where he would eventually turn and join the Kingpin, that was really well done. The seeds were set for that early on, so excellent. I think my only criticism is Vanessa. I liked the homeless zombies that we encountered in the sewers. They were a little weird, but I got a chuckle out of them being the foil to Turk when he's chasing after Daredevil. But to have Vanessa survive and then basically run into these people and just kind of become one of them, I thought was a little weird. But not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean the way that I'm kind of, you know, if I take away the comic booky elements of all this, you know, these are people with mental problems or drug issues, right? Like
Hmm.
this is like walking through Kensington if you're somebody who lives in near Philly, where there's just people around and they look like they're out of their mind, and that's either because they have some sort of real problem or they're just doped up on something. Um, so this is like giving them sort of like a this zombie aspect to them, I guess, is a way to you know connect it to the real world, but still keep it a little bit at arm's length where it feels a little comic booky. And then with her, I just looked at it like she hit her head, she's got amnesia again,
Mm,
another kind of comic book trope. But
sure.
I have to see where this goes. I don't, although I might have read some of the issues in the past ahead. Spoilers, we're not going to get we're not going to see Vanessa again in the rest of this volume, unless I'm misremembering. So,
No, you're right.
um, so we'll find out more at a later date.
All right, let's go on to 173, Lady Killer. The Gladiator is about to stand trial for the hostage situation in the museum back in issue 166. However, Matt's assistant Becky recognizes him as the man who destroyed her legs a few years ago. Well, it turns out there's another thug out there with the same build and face as the Gladiator, causing harm to others, and this is discovered when the other thug attempts to attack the Gladiator's parole officer when the Gladiator is out but has an alibi. But the only way to put this new thug away is for Becky to testify about the events from her past. All right, Stojr, what are your thoughts?
Well, first is like that's Clark Kent on
Oh
367,
yeah,
right?
oh
Like,
yeah. It's not called
and
that,
in
but
a
that's
sense,
him.
Lois Lane. So, I thought that was a nice little, Easter egg, so to speak. Electra comes off pretty. Wait, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes from the wrong issue. The Matt's a bit of an a-hole to Becky early on in this story. And then at the end, apologizes for it and makes up for it. What I like about this story is like similar to my comments about like the how they how they're showing a real life issue but keeping it a little bit you know I don't want to say kid friendly, but a little bit more comic friendly without like hitting you on the head with exactly what's going on. If you replaced sexual assault with crippling in this issue, they wouldn't have to change anything else, right? Because what happens when somebody's assaulted, raped, what have you? They're going, they're scared to come forward. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want, and then you get, people that might get angry with them because, like, well, wait a second, if you're not going to come forward, are they going to do that again to somebody else? Like, by the end of this issue, I felt like this could also almost be, a way for them to write a story about that, but get
Mm.
around the comics code. And the way they get around it is that he crippled you, he didn't assault you, so to speak. And for me, even if I'm just inventing that in my own headcanon, this makes this issue very powerful and strong, right? Because it shows a different perspective, which would be Matt being an a-hole earlier in the issue. And there's some people that would very much have that perspective of like, well, what do you mean you didn't, go to the police after that happened? He's just going to do it to another girl, or he's just going to do it to another person. And you get that other perspective of why they didn't. And then you also see them finding the strength by the end of the issue to do that and to stand up to and face their accuser. Now, obviously, we'll see in future issues if there's any more interaction or if this is the end of it. But regardless, for the character, they did do that. Maybe I'm attributing more depth to this than needed, but I thought that I just felt like when I read this issue that it was almost like a metaphor for something like that in real life. What were your thoughts?
I like your interpretation better than just what's on the page, and I think you might be right. I had not even considered that until you started talking about it. Up until that point, I was just thinking, okay, it's a fine issue, not anything too spectacular about it, other than Miller really knows how to turn a phrase at the end when he has Matt tell Becky not to let the thug cripple her, right? But
Yeah, it's a little. She's the one in the wheelchair, man. Like,
Right. Well, I mean, it makes the point of, yes, she does not have use of her legs, but that doesn't mean she has to be quote unquote crippled, right? She doesn't have to
yeah,
just give up the rest of her life or whatever the case may be. So, but no, I really like your interpretation. That makes it a much more interesting story and with a lot more depth. So I'm willing to go with that.
yeah. I mean, and you gotta deal with the comic booky elements of like these two people that want to dress up in gladiator-esque outfits and are doing the same. That's all a little silly. But I mean, look, frankly, like the guy that and look, not to underline my thought process too much because it could be not. I didn't do any research to see if Miller has ever talked about this, but the fake gladiator looks like he just has like a what's it, BDSM mat, like whatever those like sexual weirdness things are where people wear like the gimp masks and things like that. Like he doesn't look like a gladiator. It looks like those weird sexual fetish things where people have those types of things. He's got spikes and a neck collar and a chain around him and things like that. So whereas the gladiator, he's got basically blades from a saw band or something around him. So anyway,
Small update on the YouTube feed. The picture for issue 179 just showed up. Or wait, not 179. The one with the kingpin on the cover. It's slowly catching up. God. I just full on decided to close the comic viewer, and it actually did jump the frames per second that are going out up to what I have it set at, which I hadn't had problems in previous recordings, but God, I'm so upset. All right, let's go on. Let's continue. 174, The Assassination of Matt Murdock. Okay, Elektra is in Paris and discovers that the clan of ninja assassins called the Hand have a hideout on Matt Murdock. In the US, Matt is preparing for his defense of the Gladiator when he finally learns why his legal partner, Foggy Nelson, has been avoiding him. Essentially, Foggy lost the ability to fund their law firm. Well, the Hand strikes both the... Gosh, I think I might have been falling asleep when I wrote these notes. Matt, the lawyer, survives, but he is injured. Oh, both lawyers survive. Him and Foggy survive. Matt is injured to the point of losing his radar sense, though. This doesn't stop him from returning as Daredevil again in order to help rescue the Gladiator. All right, what are your thoughts here, Stojer?
so I'm not entirely sure why Foggy was so angry with Matt in previous issues. Like he feels like he's more mad at himself, and you would imagine that he would be more maybe avoiding Matt. Like that all makes sense, but like he like pretty much like kicked him out of the room like in a previous scene. So that all felt a little weird. I like the reconciliation though. I think like it makes sense of why Foggy's kind of driving himself crazy. I just don't know that the build up fits with it. Like you almost felt like I was wondering is did Foggy just and I don't remember if Foggy knows that he's Daredevil or not.
I don't
But
think
like
it does.
did he discover that and now he's angry at him? Did he think that Matt did something wrong? So it felt a little bit like a heel turn that Foggy was mad at himself and embarrassed about what was going on. That he couldn't, maintain the storefront, and that's why he was treating him the way it does. But again, when people are stressed and upset and things like that, under, it's not too out of the ordinary. People do weird things that don't logically make sense. The Daredevil, or I'm sorry, Elektra rather, fighting the assassin is just kind of badass. I like that as like a background to a lot of the interactions between Foggy. I think that the loss of Matt's radar sense, but the maintaining of his other senses is something I kind of like, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I was ready to hate on this because the sort of trope of like the superhero loses his powers thing has been done so many times, feels silly, but it's not that. It's a specific aspect of his powers, but he can still kind of get by with some other things like listening for heartbeats or smells and things like that. And now he's got to kind of figure out how to restore this, and it almost makes a little bit of sense because you have
you have an explosion with like a concussive blast that comes along with it that might disrupt something in your head and something along those lines. So I don't know how he's going to get it back because I don't think we get that far in this volume. I liked the reluctance of Gladiator putting his outfit on and sort of fighting side by side with Elektra. I thought that was pretty cool looking. Obviously, they used that for the cover of this volume. I think it shows the strength of that villain, and how Gladiator again isn't, at least the way he's written in this volume, isn't a straight up villain. He's a mentally ill man who is trying to do the right thing. I thought that's really cool. And look, we have the introduction of the Foot Clan. I mean the Hand. So I forget who came first. I think the Foot Clan came first.
The Hand.
Oh, the Hand came. Oh, that's right. Because all of the Ninja Turtles is spoofing the Miller Daredevil stuff. That's right.
Yep.
So the Hand stuff here is pretty cool. I think having this cult of ninjas be a foil for Daredevil is something that works really well to this day. What are your thoughts?
At risk of becoming a broken record, fun issue. I enjoyed it. I thought the coloring in this one was quite good. I like the kind of pastel blue green hues that we're getting a lot of in this one. Makes New York feel like it's lit up in neon, right? So I enjoyed that. And Miller's juggling several subplots, which they all seem like they're going to lead somewhere, and so I appreciate that. You get a little depth there. And I have some thoughts on the Hand, but I'm going to save that for the next issue. All right, should we do that?
Let's do it.
All right, Daredevil 175, Gauntlet. And yes, that is pronounced Gauntlet. This Gauntlet, without the U, is the form of punishment when one is hit from both sides, and hence we get that term, running the gauntlet. Gauntlet, that is spelled with a U, is the armored glove, hence why one throws down the gauntlet in order to issue a challenge. They're both pronounced the same way, although dictionaries have begun to treat the two words as interchangeable because, well, we modern writers are lazy, right? Okay.
That's interesting because the Spider-Man post Brand New Day crossover, where Brand New Day, they brought back they introduced a bunch of new villains, and then and they sort of put the classic villains on the shelf for a bit, and then they started to bring them back as part of the storyline called the Gauntlet. Has the U in it. That's what I was just rolling over. So to your point about like dictionaries are using them interchangeably, but they are, because I thought it was like a misspelling, and to your point about being too late at night, like I was reading this one at like 12 a.m. last night. I didn't spend the time to look up why the U is missing. So it's great information.
Yeah. And it caught me because I thought it was a misspelling too. It was like, how did they do that on the title? And as I looked into it, oh no, wait, no, this is just a change in language. Apparently there's different etymologies too, like Gauntlet without the U has a Swedish Nordic origin, and Gauntlet with the U has a French origin. So anyway. All right, so I might be wrong on that last bit. I'm doing that off of memory, not my notes. Okay, so Daredevil.
That's all right. I still, to this day, the greatest line in Infinity War, it still rings in my head because it has such an application to real life, and it has to do with Rocket Raccoon and Thor talking, and he says, I forget exactly what he says, but something like, we're going to go to Nebuchadnezzar, or we're going to go to wherever this place. And somebody goes, that's a made up word. And he just goes, all words are made up. It's like, well, yeah, that's true. Like, if enough people start saying something a certain way, that just makes its way into the dictionary and is the way that it works. So, all words are made up.
Yep. God, I was trying to think of a current kid slang that fits that, but I can't think of one off the top of my head now. All right, so anyway, Daredevil goes to Elektra to see what information she has on the mysterious ninjas that attack Matt Murdock, but instead of helping, she defenestrates Daredevil, leaving our hero to his own investigation, which means Matt has left his reunited partner, Foggy Nelson, to handle the Gladiator trial by himself. Meanwhile, Daredevil does track down the hand ninjas, as does Elektra. Elektra is able to defeat a legendary ninja master, but also kill the man who hired the assassins. We end by getting the sense that the Kingpin has been manipulating the strings of our heroes once again, and arranged the whole thing for Daredevil and Elektra to take out this rival crime lord. Alright, Stojr, what are your thoughts here?
So I didn't feel like we needed the copy paste of the final page of the previous issue. I get like recap pages, but like I mean, it's almost literally. It looks like they adapt it slightly, but it's almost literally a copy paste.
Yep, 407 and 412.
They add a panel or two. It looks like they just kind of rework the guy talking and giving him the picture, but otherwise there's no real new content or change content on the page. They just tweak the bottom of it a little bit. It's a cool panel, it's a cool page rather, but and it's missing the next issue thing obviously, but I felt like that was a little weird. Took away from it a little bit for me. The idea of Daredevil protecting Foggy and Foggy not even knowing it, and taking out the ninjas as they try and assassinate him across the city is pretty strong. I like that. Ninjas are always cool in these comics. I like you kind of see Daredevil and Elektra teaming up here, and Foggy being a lawyer on his own. This is introducing a bit of more of a supernatural element with like these like ninjas that can't die. I kind of like that. I mean, I avoid the magic stuff for the most part, but hey, we had Animen in this volume, so I'll take a ninja that can't die easily over a cat guy or an ape person. What did you think?
Yeah. Again, really enjoy it. The reveal of the Kingpin at the end is fantastic and clever. I love that Foggy gets his day in court and proves to himself that he's a competent lawyer by getting the whole trial thrown out on precedent, so that was good. And of course, who doesn't love mystic ninja secret societies, right? I like the Hand. I think the Hand have got to be one of the best evil organizations in the Marvel Universe. With them being trained ninja assassins who are then put to death if they fail is kind of a unique touch. Although, I will admit, I think that seems to be a bad business model if you have to kill a highly trained employee every time he makes a mistake. The cost of hiring and trained replacements has to be astronomical. Now,
I will say though, with the day in court and the precedent thing, it teeters on the edge of like my problems with magic in the sense that like they don't actually explain like what the precedent was or like why it got thrown out. They're just like, oh yeah, like it was this other case back in 32. I'm like, well, wait a second. How about you explain that a little bit more? Because I don't want them to be doing that all the time, right? Just like randomly referencing made up case law and not like explaining the whys behind it. But I'll give it to, I'll let them have it because we haven't seen Foggy really shine in this issue, in this whole volume. Like he got married, and he's, stumbled with the storefront stuff. But like other than that, he's just been completely in the background.
Yeah. Okay, so you don't like lawyer magic, but you're okay with ninja magic. Am I getting my Stojr lore correct?
There seems to be some rules here, right? They're not just going to die until you do something to them that will kill them, right? They're not going to, I'm not a big fan of spoilers like the whole Hand resurrection stuff later. Mm-hmm. Because again, then, you're sort of breaking those rules. But again, at least it's like, all right, we have to steal their body. It almost is a little bit like Batman Lazarus Pit thought process to it. We might be able to control you when you're revived and things like that. So there's some rules in there. But like, it's not like with the lawyer magic and with the magic, it's just like, all right, now we're going to be able to do this thing that we never talked about before. And we just like made up the word that goes along with it. Like, I don't know.
All right. Well, one last thing I'll say on the ninjas. If I want to be really pedantic, I'd point out that ninjas are not real. All right. So the whole thing with the Hand is fantasy anything. There are no such thing as ninjas. Historically, ninjas are not a form of martial art, but rather someone who engages in espionage. So anyone could be a ninja if you're going to go out and be a spy. So essentially, it's an act that one engages in rather than a type of arts or a profession or something. It's I guess being a medievalist myself, I think of it as kind of the equivalent of being a Viking, right? You don't actually, a Viking is not a race or an ethnicity; it is something that you do. But we think of it in as that's who you are, right? But I don't care. All right, this book came out in the 80s. Ninjas were all the rage, and it's capitalizing on that. And having a bunch of trained ninja warriors as assassins is just cool. I like the concept of it, even if there's no reality behind it. I don't care. It's a fantasy book. It's fun.
Is it similar to, I guess, like I'm going to use like the thing that we've seen in here, like burglars, right? Like you burglar, you steal from people, so you're labeled as a burglar,
Right.
but like I guess I'm trying to relate that to, you're engaging in espionage, hence you're a ninja, but you're saying that you wouldn't call yourself a ninja, you would
So
just be doing ninja things.
yes, that is my understanding. So I don't know how you equate fully to a burglar because a burglar is not being misconstrued as a type of martial arts, right? That it's not.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, you are a burglar because you
You're
engage in
focusing
burglary.
on the idea that like I'm going to go learn ninja.
Yes,
And it's
yeah,
like, well, that's not you go learn karate, you go learn jujitsu, and then you might engage in ninja activities.
yes, yep,
Gotcha. Okay,
okay.
I'm good. I'm caught up.
All right, cool. Nearly done here. Daredevil 176, Hunters. Having lost his radar sense, Daredevil decides to seek out his old mentor, a blind man named Stick. His girlfriend Heather decides to go after Matt, so she too seeks out Stick, as does Elektra in the shadows, and Turk steals a power suit to get his revenge on Daredevil, and he too is going to seek out Stick once word gets out that Daredevil is looking for him. Well, all of our characters manage to track Stick down, during which DD knocks out Turk in his power suit, and Elektra ends up battling and defeating the hand ninja of legend, Karigi. Alright, Stojr, what are your thoughts?
I wasn't a big fan of the power suit stuff. Like again, it leads to some interesting or some humorous with the informant and the guy, everybody trying to get a hold of Stick, and he's by the time the last person gets there, he doesn't even let them ask. He just tells them where they're at.
Yep.
He's at Duke's. I thought that was kind of funny and humorous, but like the power suit as a thing just kind of felt like tacked on and out of place. I get it for the plot. I'm not sure what they could have done differently, but I'm sort of like zoned in on this sort of like dark underworld. This, we got ninjas. We're gonna go find Stick, and just like this like weird power suit kind of thrown in the mix. It puts that it's like having Stiltman in the middle of this issue or something like that for me. Not a huge deal. I didn't like completely bump into it, but that was one of the things that I had. The battle between Elektra and the super assassin was really cool, and him in flames and her having to, I guess behead him or whatever happens at the end there is pretty cool scenes, and I assume this is our first Stick introduction. Like
I think so.
I mean, it's obviously in this volume, but. I don't know that they've ever talked about it previously. Maybe there was something of like a mentor, but I think like Stick is probably a Miller creation. It feels that way. So I think this is great. I guess my only quibble is that I want to read the next issue and I don't have it because this is, or at least don't have it in epic format because I actually do have it in the Daredevil Visionaries Volume 2. But yeah, I would have liked to, I'm hoping that they announce the next Epic Collection volume because everything else that we're going to see in here, Bizarre Adventures, as well as the What If issue, is just kind of bonus material. It doesn't continue these storylines per se.
Yeah, I think I saw the rumor that the next announcements are supposed to be first week of February, so we'll hopefully find out then, right? This, I thought, was a well-crafted story. Miller brings all these characters together with the same objective. We get that hilarious interlude that you mentioned where they confront Wall-Eyed Pike for where to find Stick, and then a great resolution as they all face their own battle when Stick is finally found. And I think having Miller as both the writer and the artist is leading to some great opportunities for the art to just speak for itself, right? The entire battle between Elektra and Kirigi lacks any dialogue beyond sound effects. So it kind of feels like an early prelude to modern comic storytelling, right? Just more pictures, more action, less talk. All right.
Unless you're, and then it's a page. It's 10 pages of talk.
Right.
And I'm not hating on him. I actually really enjoy his work for Marvel, and he's coming back to write Avengers very soon. So,
but yeah,
that's
Bendis
why
is notorious for the word balloons interchanging with one another. Yeah,
Yep.
But I agree with you. His stuff is great, but yeah, he's very talky. All right, let's quickly wrap this up. Excuse me. What If, number 28, Matt Murdock, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., written by Mike W. Barr, penciled by Frank Miller, co-plotted by the both of them, inks by Klaus Janson. In this alternate reality, when Matt Murdock was blinded by a radioactive canister, Tony Stark happened to be nearby. Tony took the young Matt to the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, and Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. helped him recover, and they trained him to use his super senses. Well, Hydra kidnapped Matt's father, so his first mission came to be rescuing his father, who thus never worked for the Fixer in the end, and thus didn't die prematurely, and Matt just joined S.H.I.E.L.D. All right, your thoughts, Stojr?
I mean, I thought this is a fun but forgettable issue of What If. I'm used to What Ifs having a more darker turn, and ultimately this is more positive's take on what could have happened with Matt's life. So I think that makes it somewhat forgettable in that sense. I like that Miller's doing the art. It makes it feel consistent with the other things that we're seeing, and it's always good to see the primary artist doing these sort of What If issues, or good artists doing these What If issues, as opposed to just somebody trying out in the industry. Not to say that that's terrible to have those tryouts. So it's that those are also fun, but this is a sort of an interesting mix of that type of stuff. So for me, it's just kind of it's a little fun but forgettable issue. What'd you think?
Yeah, it's the after dinner mint, right? It's fun, but it's not what you're here for. And yeah, I think it's because Miller provides the art. That's why it's here in the Epic. We don't typically get What If issues. I enjoy What If. I like them. I hope we get a What If Epic someday. I'm teetering on whether I should buy the Omnis or not for that, because I just don't know if we'll get them in Epic form or not. So we'll.
Yeah, I've considered that too, and I'm not sure. I have to actually do some research on what's the naming convention of them, because I think there's 2 volumes of What If, and then there's Into the Multiverse ones.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's What If Volume 2 that they just happen to call that.
I think so. I think that's what it is. There's the classic What If, and then when it got revived later on is the Into the Multiverse, or I don't know. They did What If as complete collection, so in theory they could just rebrand those and put them out as epics, but I don't know if they will. All right. Final one. Bizarre Adventures number 28, Elektra, solely done by Frank Miller. Elektra has been hired to kill a man, only to discover that man's mission was to kill a Nazi torturer as revenge for his family's death. With this new knowledge, Elektra faces her employer and finishes the job of her intended target. All right, Stojr, your thoughts?
I mean, I normally am not a huge fan of black and white stuff, but I think Miller and drawing Elektra, it really fits well here. I think it's dark, but still has sort of clean lines, and it's an interesting little story. Putting it into the back of an epic collection, or the back of an annual, or in this case in a Bizarre Adventures book with a bunch of other stories, makes a lot of sense. It fleshes out that character of Elektra. It shows sort of her commitment to the things that she has set up, and gives her some interesting questions or challenges that may only be internal in her head, but we as the reader can see that stuff. So
yeah.
I thought it was fun. I thought it was good.
Yep. Agreed. Nice short little twist of a story. It does make you wonder what Elektra's vetting process must be if she's willing to take an assassination job from a guy but never figure out that he was a Nazi. And clearly she's not happy by the fact that he's a Nazi, because she kills him in the end, right? So, yeah. Okay, as for the bonus material, here we are. We get a little bit of original art. We get that Daredevil Bible written by Frank Miller, the Daredevil page from the 1981 Marvel calendar, which hilariously has a week that goes through all of Matt's different girlfriends. Again, I don't think I realized how much of a player Matt was until I read this volume, so I now have new knowledge. And then it wraps up with some more recent Miller art for the covers of the collected editions that you've been showing off, Stojr. And you mentioned it at the beginning, and I agree with you. It's striking to me just how clunky Miller's art has become, which is fine, and it works in proper context. But his earlier art that we see here seems more refined. The later stuff feels more like caricature.
Yeah, if I mean, I don't know who's going to be able to see the stream other than you, even
Yep.
after the fact. But and I don't actually remember where I got this from. But I picked it up somewhere. But you can see, I mean, and this is really strong later art, but it's very different than what we're seeing here, right? And I think like, this has a lot more of the like boxy, I want to say. Maybe this is a good example. Kind of see like Matt's face there, right? Like it's almost like there's very straight lines with the way that they have it set up. So even this with I think like is a really strong art piece. This Elektra Lives Again Epic Comics. I guess this is where they got the name from. But you can see the art style evolving and changing and not really being the same. I mean, hell, even on the cover of this, which is in the bonus material, I mean, that doesn't look like the things that we got in this issue. So
Yeah. All right, shall we wrap it up with some ratings here?
I think so, because I don't know who can actually see this, and hopefully the audio stays good throughout the entire
God,
time.
I hope so. I'd hate to have to re-record this. I don't know when we'd have time to. Anyway, ratings for this volume. This is really an incredible volume. Granted, it gets off to a rough start, and the first few issues before Frank Miller joins the book are difficult to find any fun in, at least for me. But if you power through them, we get interesting and inventive stories and great artwork. Honestly, it's Miller's plots and writing that really stand out. Every panel seems to be setting up a satisfying conclusion and has relevance. Granted, I might be exaggerating a little bit, but you kind of get my point. We get great new characters like Elektra or the Hand, and Miller builds up the mythos of Bullseye and the Kingpin incredibly well. As I mentioned before, the regular panel showing the skyscraper building that the Kingpin resides in almost makes the building feel like its own character. The building is so distinctive that at first I didn't think much of the panels that show the exterior of it, but towards the end of this volume, whenever I saw that image, I just knew the Kingpin was there, and no explanation was needed. So anyway, I'm going to give this a 9.0. Only thing pulling it down from a 10, I think, is those first 3 issues, which don't do the remainder justice. And for the first stretch of Miller's run, it seemed like he was doing a lot of cleanup from those issues, like resolving the reintroduction of the Black Widow and that sort of thing. And Stojr, it just occurred to me, I did not get your rating ahead of time, so I don't have... Well, no one can see the screen anyway. It doesn't matter. This is now an audio podcast. So, Stojr, what are your final thoughts here?
Yeah, so I feel like this is overall is a really strong epic. I'm going to give it an 8.0, which might feel a little low for how well we've talked about some of this, but I also know how well some of the future stuff is going to be in the Daredevil mythos. I'm trying not to go back and compare to my ratings for X-Men yet in my head, but I'm thinking ahead and trying to scale out like where this will land when we get to Bendis's Daredevil, when we get to the rest of Frank Miller's Daredevil, things like that. And I think that this is really strong, but there will be some stuff that comes up soon that will knock it out of the park. So I'm trying to leave a little bit of room to differentiate there. I think that some of the beginning issues, as you described, bring it down a little bit from like a perfect volume. But overall, I think it's really strong. So I think 8.0 is a strong score too.
All right. Let us finally wrap up then with some discussion of where we're going next. So we should be going to the Incredible Hulk Volume 8, The Curate of Dr. Banner, but because of my mobility issues, I still cannot get my copy of that book. So I am proposing that we push that back another month. My current timeline for healing is about 2 months, so if all goes well, I will hopefully be healed up in 2 months to be able to grab that copy of the book. And if not, then we might need to push that one back another month. But I still fully intend on doing Volume 8 of Incredible Hulk. We just might